Brother Wushuang. Hu Qing turned his head and saw Jian Wushuang. His heart leapt with joy, and he quickly said, Brother Wushuang, if you leave Shilu here now, there's still hope. Hurry! Before Hu Qing could finish speaking, Jian Wushuang interrupted him. Hu Qing, you need to see the situation clearly. This is the northern spacetime, our homeland. Do you want to leave a permanent scourge here? Brother Wushuang. Hu Qing's expression shifted. He didn't want to leave a disaster in the northern spacetime, but he also didn't want this calamity to wreak havoc elsewhere. This was the northern spacetime where he could still exert some control. If Shilu reached the realm god continent, it would be over. No one would be able to suppress him, and there would be no limit of 20 million units of divine power. I understand all of this. Jian Wushuang's tone was heavy. But don't forget, the powerhouses on the realm god continent are much stronger than you, and with all the gods gathered there, it's not as terrifying as you think. If we stop now and let Realm King send him away, it's still not too late. But Hu Qing felt a pang of guilt. This time he really had to take the blame. Seeing the hesitation in Hu Qing's expression, Jian Wushuang pressed his advantage. Don't worry. Once we get to the realm god continent, we'll have a chance to defeat Shilu. But here in the northern spacetime, it's not possible. Listen to me, after we resolve the Qishan Temple issue, I'll go with you to the realm god continent to face Shilu together. It's been a long time since we've fought side by side, brother. But Hu Qing was still hesitant. No buts. Jian Wushuang shouted angrily. If Shilu dies in the northern spacetime, our homeland is finished. If he goes to the realm god continent, we won't have that worry. You need to understand what's important. As he spoke, Jian Wushuang also observed the changes in Shilu. The opponent was still continuously absorbing the blood-red power, and his divine power had reached 19 million. Even if Hu Qing took action now, he wouldn't be able to kill Shilu. In the end, Hu Qing did not persist and lowered his head. Realm King, on the other hand, took out a super-spatial teleportation array, ready at any moment. As soon as Hu Qing stopped, he would move Shilu into the array, and then Shilu could be sent to the realm god continent. Now! Jian Wushuang quickly transmitted a reminder to Realm King. Unfortunately, this time Shilu didn't want to comply. Realm King took the initiative to contact Shilu, wanting to send him away, but his offer was refused. After fighting for so long, you want me to leave? Shilu revealed a fierce expression. You sure have some nerve. His divine power erupted once again, reaching a staggering 20 million. Hu Qing turned around to find that Shilu's divine power had surpassed his own, his expression changing accordingly. What's going on? Jian Wushuang was about to inquire with Realm King when a streak of light pierced through his chest directly. Even his tribulation armor couldn't withstand it. In an instant, Jian Wushuang's divine body shattered into pieces. Shilu made his move. While absorbing the power of blood, he attacked the crowd. One of the streaks of light happened to hit Jian Wushuang. As for Hu Qing, he could easily fend off Shilu's attacks. After all, Shilu hadn't achieved his full potential yet, his divine power only equal to Hu Qing's. But others couldn't withstand such an assault. Boom! Hu Qing's divine power erupted once again, transforming into numerous phantoms to help others fend off the attack. It's over. Realm King's face turned ashen. He had already notified the 3 eternal beings to come, but Shilu's divine power was still growing. When the 3 eternal beings arrived, it would only mean death, because Shilu's divine power had completely surpassed 20 million, reaching the 9th tribulation level. TSK, complete form. His whole body radiated a golden light, charging forward to attack Hu Qing. Every move he made caused the entire northern spacetime to tremble. All practitioners felt the terrifying power emanating from him. Before everything erupted, Babata controlled the golden pyramid to envelop Jian Wushuang inside, and he arranged a healing chamber to revive Jian Wushuang. The previous attack had directly shattered not only his divine body but also his origin source. Jian Wushuang couldn't even muster his divine power, let alone his life force. Master! Seeing Jian Wushuang wake up from unconsciousness, Babata hurried forward. Jian Wushuang's divine power was extremely weak, unable to mobilize the origin source. Now, Shilu was almost like how Qi Juxiao was at his peak. How could he withstand the opponent's attacks? Babata, unleash your strongest attack. Target Shilu. Spare no effort. Jian Wushuang struggled to get up and saw Shilu outside, fear evident in his eyes. Shilu was not Qi Juxiao. He possessed absolute intelligence. Trying to outsmart him was simply impossible. Only a direct strong attack would work. Babata silently prayed, willing to sacrifice everything, and disappeared from the control room, mobilizing the essence of myriad dark brilliance, preparing to go all out. A secret realm-level attack now had little effect on Qi Juxiao. Only a cosmic-level attack could kill him. Babata gathered the black radiance essence, condensing the power of the entire pyramid, and even the red crystals trembled. With full force, a cosmic-level attack. A strike with 30 million divine power. Enough to annihilate everything. Destroying the ancient moon spacetime would be a matter of moments. Realm King also noticed the reaction from the pyramid side, feeling a glimmer of hope. Hu Qing, step aside. Jian Wushuang's voice lacked strength. He almost perished from that last strike. If they didn't fight desperately now, they would all perish here. Originally, he just wanted to acquire some scarlet blood power to enhance his divine power, but he didn't expect things to escalate to this extent. In the void, Hu Qing was still battling the first phase complete form of Shilu. Upon hearing Jian Wushuang's message, he was also somewhat surprised. Step aside. Jian Wushuang roared with all his strength, a red button appearing within reach. Babata said heavily, Master, everything is ready. The cosmic-level attack can be launched at any time. Snap. Seeing Hu Qing step aside, Jian Wushuang pressed the red button directly, only then realizing that this attack was at the cosmic level. The entire pyramid erupted with a dazzling red light. A blue beam shot into the sky. A blue aura. That was the power of the starry sky. Seeing this scene, even Realm King was extremely surprised. Hard to believe. A strike containing 30 million divine power erupted instantly. The blue beam soared towards Shilu. Ha! Shilu hadn't even had time to be astonished before he felt the fragmentation of divine power. As a complete form, Shilu possessed a divine power of 23 million. He was already at the level of the 9th tribulation. But facing a strike with 30 million divine power, he too would perish. In that moment he regretted. Realm King of the North, I'm willing to leave. Hurry and send me away. Shilu struggled to block with both arms and shouted loudly at Realm King. If I perish here, your North spacetime will be doomed. Remember, I was created by Zamasu. He will come after you. Initially, Realm King had given up, ready to let Shilu perish in the northern spacetime. Because he knew the relationship between Jian Wushuang and Weiss was extraordinary. Perhaps Weiss would take action to eliminate Shilu. Now, upon hearing about Zamasu, his heart lit up. Zamasu was an extraordinary existence, more troublesome than letting the blood-red power invade the northern spacetime. Realm King's mind stirred, and he said coldly, Do not resist. Before Shilu, who was resisting attacks from afar, was completely shattered. A trace of divine power entered the super array. That was Shilu's core. Swish, buzz. A loud hum sounded, and the great array activated, causing Shilu to completely disappear from the northern spacetime. However, the cosmic-level attack emanating from the pyramid did not stop. Relentlessly, after losing its target, it surged straight into the ancient moon spacetime. Wherever it passed, spacetime shattered. It directly pierced through the entire ancient moon spacetime, only stopping when it reached the desolate land. Shilu disappeared, leaving behind only some remnants of the blood-red power, staining the primordial black heaven. This was easily solved. If Shilu had died in the northern spacetime, at least one ancient moon spacetime would have been stained red. At that time, there would be no way to remedy it. Now it was simple, just clear away the blood-red power. This blood-red power was like rootless water, very easy to handle. Inside the pyramid, Jian Wushuang recovered his origin source and then mobilized the power of life to restore his divine power. Phew! Looking at the weak Babata in front of him, without guessing, he knew that the pyramid was probably severely damaged, and the black radiance essence obtained from Realm King was also exhausted. No, there were still the original 17 sides. Patting Babata's head, he moved his figure and directly left the pyramid. Outside, the blood-red horror was disturbing the primordial black heaven. But except for Hu Qing, everyone else's faces showed victorious smiles. This battle they won. In the northern spacetime, victory was achieved. However, victory eluded them. Hu Qing. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly, noticing the embarrassment and guilt on the other's face. But that didn't matter much. In the future, when his own strength grew, he would deal with Xilu himself. There was no need for guilt. Realm King appeared pleased at this moment, approaching Hu Qing and patting his shoulder. Young man, don't be under pressure. Then he turned to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, I owe you a favor this time. The matter with Xilu is not as simple as you think. 100,000 eras ago, I dealt with a troublesome fellow, even more formidable than Xilu. But now, the northern spacetime should be free of such threats. You can safely return to Qishan Temple to deal with the starry sky god of death, who arrived from the future. All right. Jian Wushuang listened quietly, not saying much. Well, there are still some matters to attend to. I'll take my leave now. The blood energy here is precious. Don't waste it. Realm King felt a bit embarrassed as he left hastily, handing Jian Wushuang a small green bottle. Inject the blood-red power into this bottle. It should enhance your divine power. With that, he left hurriedly. Wu Zua and the others followed slowly. No one said much. After returning to the pyramid together and calming down for a while, Jian Wushuang spoke up. Anyway, we've dealt with a big problem in the northern spacetime this time. There's no need for everyone to feel guilty. Yeah, if you really feel bad about it, we can all go to the Realm God continent together in the future and reclaim our honor. Wu Zua chimed in. 8 people. Perhaps only Hu Qing truly felt remorse. As for the Lord Guangying, he was fine. He hadn't participated. Dongshang and Wanyan didn't care either. They had no intention of going to the Realm God continent. After all, it was too distant. At least an 8th tribulation was necessary, and the northern spacetime was sufficient to support them to that level with low danger. There was no need to venture into the Realm God continent. Although Wu Tian, with his considerable strength, harbored thoughts of going to the Realm God continent, he wasn't confident about Xilu. However, he was confident about another thing. Wu Tian believed that killing Xilu was to prove his strength rather than serving any so-called Dao heart. Hu Qing, on the other hand, was trapped by his Dao heart. He felt sorry for the strong ones of the Realm God continent. By sending a scourge to the Realm God continent, he preserved the northern spacetime. Hu Qing, rest assured, I promised, and I have never broken my word. Once the matters of Qishan Temple are settled, I will accompany you to the Realm God continent to deal with Xilu. This time he was determined. Seeing Hu Qing surpass him again, he also felt competitive. He wanted to become stronger. Wu Zua, on the side, was staring at the green bottle in Jian Wushuang's hand, unable to help saying, "Why don't we go clean up those blood essences first?" Blood essences contained the purest divine power, which couldn't be wasted. Although Jian Wushuang's expression turned a bit unpleasant upon hearing this, feeling Wu Zua was too impatient, deep down, he was more anxious than anyone. Ahem! He cleared his throat and casually tossed the bottle to Wu Zua. You guys go clean up first, I'll check the damage inside the pyramid. Hu Qing, stay and help me. No problem. Leave it to me. Wu Zua took the bottle and left the pyramid with his men. Jian Wushuang then took Hu Qing to inspect the issues within the pyramid. There was no time for repairs now. They had intended to ask Realm King for help, but he had left too quickly. So, they took matters into their own hands to see what could be fixed. And they also took the opportunity to discuss what had happened over the years. Various incidents in the ancient moon ruins. Finally, they brought up the issue of Zhangshang. He got the correct answer. Xianxia was indeed the reincarnation of a celestial maiden, but just a remnant soul. Meanwhile, chaos reigned outside. Strong men from all over the 9 heavens and 10 lands came to investigate. Upon seeing Wuxia, they refrained from approaching and were persuaded to leave by him. The ancient Black Heaven was finished. The Yi family and the Blood Robe sect had to relocate. 19 8-star sections. Only the Blood Robe sect lost its territory. Although the ancient moon ruins had also suffered losses, only the core was vanished, leaving a significant portion of the territory intact, including their stronghold. Yi Xiaowang suffered heavy losses this time, losing treasures and their home. But they could do nothing about it. Like dogs with no home, they were driven away from the primordial Black Heaven by Wuxia. Now the primordial Black Heaven couldn't be called the Black Heaven anymore. It was the Blood Heaven. Even after the absorption of blood essences into the jade bottle, a strong color remained, and those fragments of spacetime kept drifting. This place wasn't suitable for cultivation anymore. Clearing the blood essences aside, this area would become a dangerous place in the future. Apart from the Yi family, other strongmen were quite excited. Seeing others fall while they progressed felt more comfortable, especially considering the bad reputation of the Yi family and the Blood Robe sect. The power of blood came to a halt, mainly because of the Wanlu divine tree. The carrier was a mechanical life from the southern spacetime who happened to bring the power of blood with them. This matter could not be thought about in detail. If one thought about it closely, it would be discovered that the southern spacetime had a kind of animosity towards the northern spacetime. The bloody aura was a unique interest of physical life. Shilu relied on this bloody aura to enhance his divine power. It had to be said that the strong individual who created this guy definitely targeted flesh and blood life forms. Zamasu. Jian Wuxuang silently recited this name inside the pyramid and remembered it in his heart. Even Northern Realm King was extremely apprehensive. The strength and status of the other party were probably quite extraordinary. After checking the pyramid, Jian Wuxuang brought Hu Qing to the resting cabin. Hu Qing, how about this? From now on, we will take the pyramid back to Qishan Temple. It will take about 4 eras to reach the original universe. Jian Wuxuang said proudly. This was currently the fastest method. In fact, if he asked, it wouldn't be impossible for the Realm King to teleport them to the original universe, but that would lose the fun. Some things needed to be done by oneself. Hu Qing sat cross-legged on a mat. His face returned to normal, and he smiled faintly. I'll follow Brother Wuxuang's arrangements for everything. Your strength is the strongest now. We'll still need to rely on you in the future. Jian Wuxuang said politely, then asked seriously, Hu Qing, did you discover anything in the ancient moon ruins? His words had another meaning. He was not only curious but also wanted to understand the thoughts of that celestial maiden. Otherwise, when facing Xianxia after returning, he wouldn't know how to act. Hu Qing understood as well. After taking a deep breath, he replied, Brother Wuxuang, I will handle Xianxia's matter myself. Don't worry, I have a plan. Good. Jian Wuxuang heard this and didn't say more, but he didn't truly believe it in his heart. If Hu Qing had a plan, Shilu would have died long ago. Sometimes one couldn't afford to be soft-hearted. Initially, he hoped that Xianxia, for Hu Qing's sake, could break away from Yesheng. Now, it seemed that was not possible. The two chatted casually for a while, then began their cultivation. Once the bloody power was fully absorbed, they would set off immediately. They had waited for this moment for a long time, several million eras. They didn't know how Qishan Temple was now. The bloody aura of the primordial Black Heaven had taken tens of thousands of years to be completely cleansed. If Shilu had indeed perished here, the cleansing time wouldn't match the spreading time. By then, the entire world would have been invaded by the bloody aura. That would have been a big trouble. Fortunately, they had finally sent Shilu away, and Realm King had personally gone to clean up the aftermath. It was uncertain if it could be resolved. If it was resolved, then it had nothing to do with them. If not, they would still have to deal with it in the future. 10,000 years passed in an instant. The blood aura had been cleared away. The group sat together in a circle. Except for Hu Qing, Everyone else was extremely interested in the blood aura. At this moment, it was as if they had returned to the scene in Qishan Temple, sitting around the bones of Dongjun. It was the same when they arrived, and now it was the same upon their return. They hoped that this return battle would go smoothly. Hu Qing had cultivated a future self, and with a divine power of 20 million, he had already reached the limit of the northern spacetime. Even if Miashang was at the same level, they still had a chance to protect themselves. Everyone, don't hold back. Go ahead, Wu's was said with a greedy look on his face, already a bit impatient. This blood-colored aura could increase one's basic divine power. And because of Shilu's influence, the divine power increased by this blood aura was extremely pure, capable of breaking the limit of one's realm. Back then, the limit for Emperor Jian Wushuang was only 200,000, but in the end, he was able to reach 400,000. Everyone was eager, starting to absorb the blood-colored aura. The weakest among them were Dongshang and Wanyan. Their basic divine power was the weakest, so they absorbed it the fastest. They quickly reached 1.5 million. As 6th Tribulation Universe Masters, their basic divine power was 1.5 million, and with secret techniques they could break through to 2 million divine power. The strength of these two saw a significant leap. They directly rivaled the peak of the 7th Tribulation Realm. Then there were Gu Qianluo and Lord Guangying, whose divine power was similar, both peaking at over 2.3 million. Now, their basic divine power broke through to 1.8 million, and at their peak they could burst out with over 2.8 million. This was already the limit of the 7th Tribulation Realm. Their improvement this time was indeed substantial. If they had purely relied on cultivation, it would have taken at least until the 7th Tribulation Realm to achieve such power. Seeing Hu Qing's limit made them realize they still needed to work hard. After this great improvement, they also gained confidence in themselves. So quickly, already done? Wuzhou laughed aloud. This blood aura hasn't even been used up by 1/10,000th. Everyone, keep going. Wu Yan, on the other hand, sneered from the side. Humph. It's not like you absorbed that much either. Want to test it? Tong Tian. Wu's face darkened as he clenched his fist, his basic divine power already surpassing the 2 million mark. Since the change in Tong Tian, Wu's was still called the other by his old title, making Wu Tian quite uncomfortable. Both were at the 7th Tribulation Realm, and their strengths were similar. Originally, Wu's was slightly stronger than Wu Yan, but now that Wu Yan had absorbed more of the blood-colored aura, he could stand shoulder to shoulder with Wu's. It was a pity that Jin Wuyang did not come, and Fan Tianfeng had also fallen. Otherwise, these two should not be weaker than Wu's. Although 2 people were missing, Jian Wushuang was still very pleased, having gathered 8 people to return together. They did not fail Jinling's trust. It was just a bit late. Whoosh! His basic divine power was also constantly increasing, breaking through the 2 million mark without any sign of stopping. Back then, under the Emperor's limit, he could double his power. This time was no different. As his basic divine power continued to soar, his divine body fully accepted it. He reached 3 million in basic divine power in one go. He still had the capacity to absorb more, but he chose to stop. Doubling it was enough. A universe master at the 6th Tribulation Realm with 3 million in basic divine power. It was worth noting that there were 4 other equally heaven-defying 6th Tribulation Masters here, but their basic divine power was just over 2 million, and at their peak, no more than 3 million. However, Jian Wushuang could achieve 3 million in basic divine power, and at his peak, he could reach tens of millions. Buzz! Jian Wushuang suddenly stood up, clenched his fists, and shouted in a low voice, "Beast God's power!" Red light enveloped his entire body. His divine power surged by another 30,000. 10 times. Boom! His aura shook the entire pyramid. At this moment, Bab Atta flew over, exclaiming, 6 million divine power. Without using the super-eternal ancient transformation, he could unleash 6 million in divine power. With a basic divine power of 3 million, performing the super-eternal ancient transformation could now achieve 8 million. Plus the amplification from the origin source Tao arena. 3 universes could amplify by 60%, reaching about 13 million. Brother Wushuang, Wu's was pushed back by the aura, and after steadying himself, he exclaimed, "Why has your divine power turned dark red? Wasn't it blue before?" He was aware of Jian Wushuang's peak secret technique, but now it was red, and it was the power of the beast god, indicating that he hadn't used his peak secret technique. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang withdrew his aura and said calmly, "This is the power of the beast god. I just tried it by chance." However, the others looked incredibly shocked. Even Gu Qianluo, who was once ambitious, lowered his head in self-admission of inferiority. Among those present, only Hu Qing could compare with Jian Wushuang. "Hu Qing, what is your base divine power?" Jian Wushuang looked at Hu Qing, wanting to know his base divine power. 10 million. Hu Qing replied calmly. Wu Zhua and the others secretly clicked their tongues in amazement. "Monsters! You are all monsters." The few stopped paying attention to Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, each returning to absorb the blood-colored aura, aiming to reach their extreme state. Jian Wushuang wasn't too surprised after hearing 10 million. A base divine power of 10 million, coupled with the amplification from the origin source, reached 15 million, and with the future self technique, Hu Qing had a divine power of 20 million. Hu Qing's strength was indeed the strongest among all of them. In the Wanlu divine tree without restrictions, Qi Juxiao could exceed 30 million. He was the strongest existence Jian Wushuang had ever seen. But Hu Qing was different. He was a cultivator. His future potential was even greater. Moreover, there were restrictions in the northern spacetime, making it impossible to surpass the 20 million mark. Only if Danbao created a life-secret technique to elevate the entire northern spacetime could it be done. But that was a distant prospect. The matters of the resurrection path alone were uncertain. Not to mention elevating it. "Everyone, I plan to undergo my 7th tribulation before setting off. It will take some extra time." Jian Wushuang withdrew his aura and glanced at everyone. Originally, he had planned to undergo the tribulation midway, but now, having absorbed the blood-colored aura, his divine power had reached perfection but not its limit. He wanted to undergo the tribulation first before absorbing more blood-colored power. Upon hearing that Jian Wushuang was about to undergo the tribulation, everyone's eyes flickered. Tribulation. That was a major event and a good one too. Moreover, Jian Wushuang was already so powerful as a universe master of the 6th tribulation. After undergoing the tribulation, wouldn't he almost be able to rival Hu Qing? Everyone was very supportive since they were not in a hurry. At this moment, Wu Zhua spoke up, "Brother Wushuang, do you have any plans for the location of your tribulation?" This question made Jian Wushuang pause. He had never thought about it. "Isn't it possible to undergo the tribulation anywhere?" He spread his hands, feeling completely confident and not thinking it was necessary to pick a specific location or time. "Hey!" Wu Zhua stood up and patted him on the shoulder, saying, "You don't quite understand. Even if you are absolutely confident about passing the tribulation, you should choose a place with good feng shui. You will need an enormous amount of power for your tribulation. Basic divine power is 3 million, and just the divine body tribulation alone might consume tens of millions of primordial stones. Although we have money, we should still learn to save." Jian Wushuang indeed did not understand this. However, hearing that he could save on mixed element stones piqued his interest. The divine body tribulation consumed the least for him. 3 million divine power indeed required tens of millions of primordial stones, which he didn't mind, but the supreme tribulation of the origin source universe was different. That consumption was truly significant. Undergoing the tribulation for 3 perfect universes together would probably need over 100 million primordial stone. This was only the 7th tribulation. The 8th tribulation was 100 or even 1,000 times stronger than the 7th, requiring even more primordial stones. Given his scale, it would probably take life force equivalent to 1,000,000 epochs to gather that many primordial stones. The key issue was, although his life force was infinite, the scattered tribulation was not. In the northern starry sky, there were only so many 8th scattered tribulation ones. Even counting those at the 7th and 6th tribulation levels, he couldn't sell that many. Aside from the top-tier powerhouses, the remaining fifth tribulation ones, and even weaker scattered tribulation ones, couldn't produce many primordial stones. Although there were many of these people, their primordial stones were pitifully few. How could they gather enough? Jian Wushuang was also planning ahead, hoping to save some primordial stones if possible. After all, he needed to cultivate to the 8th tribulation level in the northern starry sky. He wasn't planning to go to Realm God Continent without reaching the 8th tribulation level. Especially to deal with that monster Shilu. He wouldn't join in the excitement without at least 20 million divine power. In the following time, Wuxia gave Babata the coordinates, and they entered a core area of the northern starry sky. It was also a space-time secret realm. The Taishu secret realm. At this moment, everyone had almost finished their cultivation and looked towards the Taishu secret realm in the sky. Space-time secret realms were very rare in the entire northern starry sky. This particular one bordered the ancient moon space-time. It contained endless dangers but also opportunities. Back when Wuxia underwent his tribulation, it was in this place. However, that time he was led by the Realm King, so he didn't encounter any danger. This time, a few of them entering would not have such a privilege. Just as they entered the periphery, they discovered a group of 7th tribulation wild beasts, with their leader being at the peak of the 7th tribulation, possessing a divine power of 2 million. If a universe master of the 7th tribulation came, they would struggle to navigate even the outskirts. Only those of the 8th tribulation dared to venture. The weakest of the 8th tribulation possessed at least 3 million divine power, while the stronger ones could surpass 5 million divine power. There was no danger in exploring the outskirts. Jian Wushuang and his companions did not linger. They directly traversed the group of wild beasts, shattering those ignorant creatures into powder. This was without even launching an attack. If they had attacked, even the simplest star-level attack would have annihilated these wild beasts. However, that would have been too wasteful. They had exhausted all the 10,000 units of Black Radiance essence given by Realm King. Only the original 17 units remained, so Jian Wushuang naturally needed to conserve them. Some, like Wuxia, who were itching for a fight, went out and killed for a while, naturally crushing those wild beasts swiftly, annihilating the entire group in the time it took for one incense stick to burn. Moreover, they purely destroyed without collecting any treasures from the wild beasts. The treasures on the wild beasts, mostly beast cores, were of no interest to them, tainted as they were with a bloody aura. Jian Wushuang was in no hurry. Once they had annihilated the wild beast group, they headed deeper into the Taishu secret realm. The place Wuxia mentioned was in the core of the Taishu secret realm. It was extremely dangerous but still accessible. Typically, universe masters of the 8th tribulation only stayed in the inner areas and did not dare approach the core. It was rumored that the core of the Taishu secret realm held great terror. It was the relic of an ancient sect, a sect from the primordial era of the northern spacetime. At their peak, there were dozens of universe masters at the 8th tribulation. The primordial era was too long ago for them, having surpassed even the era when the celestial maiden was born. The powerful beings from that time had basically all fallen. Moreover, at that time, there might not even have been a god of death. Once dead, they truly died. Their souls did not return to the god of death. That period could be considered a part of the northern spacetime's past. Although many super-powerful beings were born, they didn't bring any change to this world. The pyramid flew past the endless floating debris in the outer perimeter and entered the inner region. These were fragments of stone rings. Though called fragments, each piece had a diameter exceeding 10 billion miles, with some strange life forms living on them. However, these life forms were relatively weak. There were also powerful special life forms living there, but they posed no threat to them. The greatest danger in the inner region still came from the restrictive powers. These were the broken formations from the Taishu Holy Land of old. These formations could easily trap an 8th tribulation being. Therefore, it was quite dangerous. The pyramid's flying speed slowed down. With Babata's control, they weren't worried about being trapped. Even if they were trapped, Jian Wushuang could break through the restrictions. They didn't even need Hu Qing's help. The strongest 8th tribulation beings born in the Taishu Holy Land back then hadn't reached the eternal level. Eternal. 20 million units of divine power, the limit borne by the northern spacetime, also locked its origin source at this stage. If an eternal being had been born in the Taishu Holy Land back then, it probably wouldn't have been destroyed. The era when the Tiansong Elder was born was around the same time as the Taishu Holy Land. We're almost there. Wuxia could already see the solar disk at the core region through the sky. Along the way, they didn't encounter any cultivators. Since the birth of the God of Life, all 8th tribulation beings had become cautious about their lives. In the past, they had always fought because they wanted to reach the 9th tribulation. Now that they knew the 9th tribulation realm was hopeless, they settled down, waiting for the God of Life to elevate the life level of the northern spacetime before venturing out again. Thus, their journey was quite easy. Some secret and dangerous places are not treacherous because of the danger inherent to them, but rather due to the internal strife and slaughter among their own kind. Jian Wushuang looked at the scene in the sky and marveled. The once holy land of Taishu, it was likely the peak force in the entire northern spacetime. Even after so many years since its downfall, its core remains so intact. Indeed, Wuxia sighed. Back when Realm King brought me here, he said the greatest pity was this holy land of Taishu. Within it, a being once emerged who mastered spacetime at the 8th tribulation. If not for the circumstances in the northern spacetime, this being could have easily stepped into the 9th tribulation, reaching a level comparable to Realm King. Mastering spacetime, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but gaze into the distance. He recalled the words Realm King had once said to him, that if Wuxia had been born in a different era, he might have had the potential to become a Realm King. Mastering the heavenly Tao, mastering spacetime, few could achieve such feats in the tribulation realm. We've arrived. After the pyramid entered the core, Wuxia called out to Babata to stop, then pointed to the solar disk and said, "Above this is the most unique place for tribulation in the entire northern spacetime. If any of you feel confident, you can give it a try." Among those present, there were 2 at the 7th tribulation, Wuxia and Wutian, whose levels hadn't yet reached the 8th tribulation. They wanted to further solidify their foundation and were in no rush to face the tribulation. However, the few at the 6th tribulation were confident in their ability to undergo tribulation but had been holding back, thinking of returning to Qishan Temple. Now, hearing Wuxia's introduction, they were somewhat tempted. Jian Wushuang was not stingy. He directly took out 400 million primordial stones and distributed them to Dongshang, Wanyan, Guangying, and Gu Qianluo. Although these people were not lacking in tribulation treasures, they probably didn't have many primordial stones. This was a token of his goodwill. After all, they were going to face Miashang together. Don't be polite. Seeing their surprised expressions, Jian Wushuang smiled lightly and said, "Do not be careless about the tribulation. It's not too late to prepare well before attempting it. We still have time. Returning only required 4 eras." There was indeed no rush. Jian Wushuang calmed his mind, took out a mustard seed, and handed it to Wuxia. "Within this mustard seed is a treasure that I think should be quite suitable for you. Why not cultivate with it for a while?" Just like for everyone, he took out something for Wuxia, which was that eyeball. The SkySight heavenly chessboard had transformed, and it was related to the heavenly Tao. It was most suitable for Wuxia. This? Wuxia hesitated a bit, but Jian Wushuang forced it into his hand. He turned to glance at Wuxia. The other's treasures were definitely more numerous than his, so he didn't give him anything. As for Wutian, he really didn't have any treasures to give at the moment. He recalled the treasures that Realm King had given him back then and gave all of them to Wutian. Those were the treasures needed to pass the 8th tribulation. Even though Realm King had given them tribulation-passing treasures, it absolutely couldn't compare to the complete rewards received after accomplishing great deeds within the Wanlu Divine Tree. Those treasures were of great use to an ordinary universe master. But to him they were already useless, because he had long made up his mind to walk a brand new path, to break through the heavens and the earth with strength. He didn't need those things anymore. Only the primordial stones, which fully contained the origin source of divine power, were useful to him. The remaining treasures were no longer useful to his realm, and keeping them would only take up space. It was better to give them away. Wu Tian, Tong Tian. He had treated him well back then, and now that he had changed his heart and could return to the Qixin temple with him, naturally he had to take out some treasures to motivate him. Wu Tian originally intended to refuse. He had his pride and, with his previous memories, knew that Jian Wushuang was once his junior. How could he accept treasures from a junior? But when he sent his mind into the mustard seed, he changed his mind. Now, Jian Wushuang had already surpassed him. He couldn't be regarded as a junior anymore. Moreover, since he chose to return to the Qixin temple, he must be given some benefits, right? Thus, he accepted the treasures. Only then did Jian Wushuang relax. Babata. Teleport me to the solar disk. Shua. As soon as he finished speaking, he was already on the solar disk. He personally witnessed the great terror within the core. Speaking of great terror, it was actually some residual souls left behind by fallen universe masters. These residual souls continuously devoured and merged, condensing into some terrifying entities. They had soul bodies and used soul power. Their strength was not weak. There were quite a few exceeding tens of millions. For an average 8th tribulation, it was indeed a great terror. For an 8th tribulation expert daring to venture here, they needed at least the strength of someone like Divine Wood King to deal with these terrifying soul bodies. As Jian Wushuang stepped onto the solar disk, his expression also paused, and he instantly displayed the super-eternal ancient transformation. He casually applied the origin source. His divine power reached 13 million. He now realized that, with his current strength, being on this disk was indeed somewhat dangerous. Not everyone was a realm king, and even those soul entities had to show respect. When those soul entities saw him, they swarmed around him. The disk was enormous, and the soul entities were scattered all over. Fortunately, there were fewer of them in this area. If he wanted to undergo his tribulation here, he had to clear out the surrounding soul entities and then set up a large formation. At that time, others could also come here to undergo their tribulations. Otherwise, with these soul entities around, undergoing the tribulation was out of the question. Avoiding being torn to pieces would be a miracle. No wonder only Wu Zui knew that this place was highly beneficial for undergoing tribulations. There wasn't a single rumor about it outside. Those who could reach this place were all 8th tribulation perfection experts, and they couldn't undergo tribulations anymore. Trying to help their juniors would come at an enormous cost. They didn't have the protection of a pyramid. Just traversing those perilous areas could be disastrous if they got trapped. 8th tribulation experts could endure it, but 7th tribulation experts couldn't. Once trapped, it could last for billions of epochs, and 7th tribulation experts would perish, forced to undergo their tribulations within the constraints, which would not only be unhelpful but also backfire. In summary, only Jian Wushuang and his companions had the ability to bring people here to undergo their tribulations. Jian Wushuang had already mapped out a large formation in his mind. As the soul entities attacked, he transformed into countless figures, flying in all directions. He personally experienced the power brought by the disk. His true self, however, was resisting those soul entities. Some of those soul entities had soul power exceeding 10 million. They were around 12 million. Even he couldn't quickly defeat them. He could only draw the Wuxia sword, aiming for a quick battle. But just at that moment, his avatars reached the depths of the disk, and a force pressed down on him so intensely that he couldn't breathe. Instantly, his feet sank into the top of the disk, and he couldn't even fly. It was important to note that his avatars each possessed divine power in the tens of millions, yet they couldn't achieve flight. This is the core, Jian Wushuang quickly realized, his telekinetic force spreading around, discovering that he had already reached the core of the disk. His main body descended from above, observing some small circles on the disk. 9,999. My main body is within the 1,000 rings, which means those previous rings cannot trap me at all. However, the 10th ring where my clone is located has already immobilized me. Why didn't Wu Tian inform him about this? And it seems this disk is no ordinary object. At this moment, his main body lost its will to fight, directly rushing deeper, leaving those confused and ignorant soul bodies drifting on their own. Whoosh! The clone instantly returned to the main body. His main body entered the 10th ring, just a step away from the first ring, the very center of the disc. Yet he dared not explore further. His main body was within the 10th ring, still able to move. This meant the boundary here was 13 million divine powers. Without this divine power, once entered, he would likely be trapped. This was not a prohibition but a control over power. Jian Wushuang stopped and observed for a long time, unable to discern any clues. He intended to communicate with Wu Tian, but before he could speak, Wu Tian urgently signaled for him to return. Though somewhat surprised, he didn't hesitate. With a flash, he left the sun disk and ordered Babata to perform space-time transmission, re-entering the pyramid. Upon entering the pyramid, before he could inquire, seeing a projection in the chamber, he understood the reason for his recall. Lord Realm King, Jian Wushuang. He didn't expect to meet Realm King again so soon, and wondered if it was because of this place. That sun disk indeed had some strangeness to it, definitely a treasure that couldn't be taken away, far more valuable than the pyramid, at least in the 9th tribulation. But Realm King didn't mention the pyramid, instead bringing up Xilu. Gone missing. Jian Wushuang's gaze sank, surprised. Wasn't Xilu personally transmitted by you yourself, Lord Realm King? How could he be missing? Realm King's expression also looked somewhat embarrassed. The teleportation array he set up was indeed special, originally capable of monitoring Xilu. However, upon arriving at the Realm God continent, he found that Xilu couldn't be located. Jian Wushuang actually, this concerns you. Realm King spoke out at this moment, revealing the truth. Try to conceal your aura now and you'll see. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was even more astonished. Without hesitation, he immediately restrained his aura, but found nothing unusual. That's it. Realm King slapped his thigh, then continued. Xilu must have acquired your special divine power and quietly mastered your method of restraint. This time, Jian Wushuang was completely unable to sit still and exclaimed, "How is that possible? If that's true, wouldn't Xilu become extraordinarily powerful?" With that thought, he felt somewhat hopeless. If Xilu truly became extraordinarily powerful, his strength would double. His divine power already surpassed 20 million, and if he were to use the super-eternal ancient transformation, wouldn't it reach 40 million? He didn't dare to imagine. How powerful would the other party be then? At the peak of the 9th tribulation realm? Realm King sighed. This time, I have 2 pieces of news, both bad. Please go on. Wuxia on the side couldn't help but urge. Anxious. Their greatest concern now was Xilu's resurgence. But there's also one good news. Realm King's expression softened. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing Realm King's change in expression, Jian Wushuang knew it was good news. Surely, Xilu couldn't enter the northern spacetime, so Realm King was so relaxed. So, the bad news couldn't be too bad. As he guessed, after Realm King breathed a sigh of relief, he said, "The good news is that Xilu's divine power is too strong to enter the northern spacetime. The bad news is, once the life level in the northern spacetime increases, Xilu will be able to come in." Phew! Jian Wushuang also breathed a sigh of relief. Then there was no problem. They could actively seek trouble with Xilu, provided their own strength was sufficient. It wouldn't be good if they were being watched. The threat of Miashang hadn't been lifted yet, and now another terrifying entity was eyeing them. That wouldn't be pleasant. Doesn't that mean we have enough time to prepare, and maybe Xilu won't go after cultivators anymore? Maybe he won't come back to the northern spacetime. Wuxia realized the crucial point at this moment, and as much as possible he imagined Xilu in a positive light. Clap! A crisp sound rang out. Realm King snapped his fingers. More or less. Xilu's identity is very special, created, although somewhat targeting flesh and blood life forms. The life level in the northern spacetime is too low to satisfy him anymore. There's a high probability he won't come back, and the Realm God continent is more suitable for his survival. Realm King, is Xilu a threat to the Realm God continent? Hu Qing spoke up at this moment. Feeling somewhat uneasy, worried about bringing trouble to the Realm God continent. It's unlikely. The Realm God continent boasts far more powerful beings than the northern spacetime. With all the gods gathered there and Lord Realm King God overseeing, there won't be any disturbances. Realm King God. At the mention of this title, curiosity flickered in the eyes of the crowd. Realm King waved his hand dismissively and said, "You'll understand when you get to the Realm God continent. Some things cannot be spoken of. Lord Realm King, if Xilu is unlikely to return, then shouldn't there be no issue? Why mention too bad news?" Jian Wushuang was curious why Realm King seemed tense when he arrived. "Well," Realm King hesitated, then replied with a hint of tact, "One of these bad news concerns you." Jian Wushuang pointed to himself in surprise. "Me? Yes. Do you remember the metallic life form you killed?" Realm King mentioned the metallic brain from before, then continued. "Before his demise, he left behind 2 perfect metallic puppets, and there's one more unfinished puppet. Let's not dwell on that. Regarding the 2 intact metallic puppets, they've been programmed to kill you. Initially, I thought they were of average strength, planning to inform you once your strength was sufficient to handle them. But this time when I searched for Xilu, I encountered them. Their divine power has reached the 9th tribulation, and they're still repairing the 3rd puppet, the most perfect one that the metallic brain didn't create. Once repaired, their threat to you will surpass that of Xilu." Jian Wushuang was utterly dumbfounded this time, nearly stumbling as he couldn't steady himself. He had almost forgotten about this matter. Now reminded by Realm King, he dared not go to the Realm God continent. It seemed like enemies were everywhere. The others also looked at Jian Wushuang with pity in their eyes. "But don't worry too much. Even if they find a way to enter the northern spacetime, I'll inform you in advance, giving you time to prepare," Realm King reassured. Jian Wushuang found it increasingly difficult to accept. In the beginning, sparing the brains was also for the sake of the northern spacetime. But now they were being hunted. This matter the Realm King had to take responsibility for. Feeling somewhat guilty, Realm King spoke up at this moment. "You're going through tribulation, right? I'll let you use the yin-yang wheel of life and death here once. I guarantee you can successfully pass the tribulation, provided that your cultivation realm is high enough. If it's not high enough, even gods can't help you." However, Jian Wushuang couldn't feel any joy at all. He could successfully pass the tribulation anywhere. He just wanted to save some primordial stones. But now, even Realm King was impoverished, which meant poverty for Jian Wushuang, because there were no valuable treasures to offer. He could only vaguely mention the matter of using the yin-yang wheel of life and death to pass the tribulation. "All right, that's it. After you successfully pass the tribulation, dealing with Mieshang should be enough. Then you can focus on cultivating well and can go to the Realm God continent anytime." After finishing, Realm King reminded Jian Wushuang, "Those 2 metal puppets of yours haven't been fully repaired yet, and you should do it soon." Jian Wushuang could only grit his teeth and nod. "Oh, by the way, I heard that you exchanged your Realm God token for treasures in Tiansong. Next time you need something, just come directly to me instead of exchanging it with others using the token." With a generous gesture, Realm King threw another token to Jian Wushuang. Then, with a flash, he left the pyramid and entered the yin-yang wheel of life and death. After a while, the area above was cleared. Jian Wushuang, who had lost his temper, could only take the Realm God token and, with the others who were about to undergo tribulation, enter the yin-yang wheel of life and death. No need to say more. Realm King was absolutely reliable in this matter. After stepping onto the disc again, Jian Wushuang found no resistance at all. He directly entered the first ring. "You all come one by one. I won't stay here any longer. Good luck to you all." After saying that, the projection of the Realm King disappeared. Jian Wushuang and the others stayed above the disc. Exhaling deeply, Jian Wushuang extended his hand. "Who's going first?" Since he had spent a longer time in tribulation, he decided to give others the opportunity first. Dongsheng, now at the limit of the 6th tribulation, eagerly stepped into the first ring. The tribulation began. Buzz. The divine body tribulation merely lingered on Dongxing's body for a moment before disappearing instantly. Evidently, reaching the limit with the divine body meant that the seventh tribulation was child's play. Passed in an instant. The most challenging part was still the supreme tribulation of origin source. Their origin source universes were scattered all over. For this tribulation, they needed to connect their avatars with their universes and then descend the supreme tribulation. Judging from Dongxing's expression, it seemed effortless for him, as he easily passed within a day. Both origin source and divine power were enhanced. Congratulations! Jian Wushuang and the others gestured respectfully. Dongsheng laughed loudly. This place is extraordinary. I feel like I want to continue on to the eighth tribulation. Even Wuxian, who had been solemn, couldn't help but crack a smile. This time, Realm King brought some good news. However, compared to the safety of the northern spacetime, this good news seemed somewhat insignificant. Yi Lingxiao has been reborn. After reincarnation, Yi Lingxiao was in the midstream spacetime. When they returned, they could go and see. Whether Wuxian could reconnect with his past depended on the other party's ability. After Dongsheng succeeded, Wuxian was next. It took him almost a day to succeed completely, mainly because their origin source universes were too far away. Otherwise, it could have been faster. The divine body tribulation was successful in an instant. The origin source tribulation, though slower, probably took at most half an hour. Moreover, after the two brothers successfully passed the tribulation, their divine power greatly increased. Now, their basic divine power was over 2.5 million. Both Lord Guangying and Gu Qianluo also successfully passed the tribulation. They were slightly stronger than Dongsheng and Wuxian, and their divine power had also reached 3 million. If they could also master the origin source Dao arena, their strength would probably be comparable to Wuxian. Unfortunately, without the blessing of the Dao arena, their peak state would be at most over 4 million divine power. Although Jian Wushuang's origin source universe was inside his divine body and could be extracted at any time, in theory, passing the tribulation should be the simplest. However, he had a hunch that this time passing the tribulation would take at least 10,000 years. The divine body tribulation. This level wasn't simple for him. This wasn't like before. The divine body tribulation would crush the divine body once again, leading to rebirth. It also meant that he would regain a new life. How could it be ordinary? To embark on a new path of cultivation, he would have to start by changing during the tribulation. He would suppress his divine power to the basic level and then undergo the tribulation. Only by doing so could the purest divine power be washed out. Wushuang, it's your turn. After Dongsheng and Wanyan successfully transcended, they all turned to Jian Wushuang, anticipating his tribulation. Since their own tribulations had gone smoothly, they thought Jian Wushuang's would be the same, especially considering his greater strength, which should make the tribulation relatively easy for him. But only Jian Wushuang knew that his tribulation might not be simple. Stepping forward, he left a residual image in the void. Upon entering the first stage, he immediately triggered the divine body tribulation. His fundamental divine power erupted completely. 3 million. Lord Guangying noticed that Jian Wushuang hadn't used his full power, only basic divine power. Astonished, he said, "So confident that you don't even use secret techniques? It's just the seventh tribulation. 3 million divine power is enough." Gu Qianluo beside him, now much more honest, gave a fair assessment. However, Hu Qing inside the pyramid didn't agree, because the power contained within that tribulation far exceeded even his eighth tribulation. Jian Wushuang floated in midair, fists clenched. The tribulation burst out from his divine body. The force that stirred the starry sky began to cleanse his divine body. Divine power also began to differentiate, 1 giving birth to 2, 2 giving birth to 3, and 3 giving birth to infinity. Continued to disperse until it reached Jian Wushuang's limit. 3 million divine power was divided into trillions. This was his limit. As the divine power was broken down to its limit, the tribulation triggered in the starry sky began to cleanse the divided divine power. Blue thunderbolts continuously crushed Jian Wushuang's divine power, only to reform after being shattered. It was a vicious cycle. Such a terrifying aura. The onlookers saw it for the first time and couldn't help but marvel. No wonder he's so strong. His tribulation transcends ours. Lord Guangying widened his eyes, clenching his fists. At that moment, they finally understood where the gap lay. In fact, Jian Wushuang was also experiencing this level of tribulation for the first time. Since he was going to tread a completely new path, he had to face the strongest tribulation, purifying his divine power. First tribulation to wash away myriad tribulations. This was just the beginning. Each tribulation required him to cleanse himself countless times. Then the second tribulation would descend, stronger than the last by twofold. The third would be triple. Myriad tribulations meant myriad-fold. Each tribulation took 10 years. Myriad tribulations equated to 100,000 years. Jian Wushuang furrowed his brows. It was his first time triggering tribulations from the starry sky. For ordinary cultivators, tribulations usually stemmed from their own divine bodies. His was no exception. But his divine body's origin source universe possessed the power of the starry sky. So what he triggered was the tribulation of the starry sky. While other cultivators faced tribulations originating from within themselves, the highest tribulation that the origin source universe had to undergo came from the northern spacetime. Because they were practitioners of the northern spacetime, not ones who triggered the highest tribulation from the starry sky. The starry sky. Jian Wushuang squinted slightly. The tribulation I face comes from my starry sky. Self-triggered tribulation. Self-strengthening. This was indeed unprecedented. Originally focused on the power of the origin source. Now, he paid even more attention to his divine body and divine power. The stronger the tribulation, the greater the help to him. He had no worries at all. Instead, he was eager to try. 100,000 years of purification. He wanted to see what realm his divine power would reach. Boom! The first tribulation passed. And 10 years had also passed. Even Hu Qing and others came to the disk to watch his tribulation. I actually comprehended the secret technique of divine power in Brother Jian Wushuang's tribulation. Lord Guangying couldn't help but exclaim, then continued to comprehend and cultivate. He seemed to treat Jian Wushuang as a treasure. Everyone gathered around, starting to comprehend and cultivate. Especially the four who successfully crossed the tribulation this time. They didn't rush to absorb the blood essence, but improved their own divine power techniques one by one. Jian Wushuang paid no attention and continued to cleanse his divine power. After passing the first tribulation, his divine power decomposed once again, and he continued to cleanse it after decomposition. The basic divine power remained at 3 million. But he was confident enough to defeat someone with 5 million divine power using his 3 million divine power. This was the divine power after cleansing. As the tribulations continued to descend, the 4th time, the 5th time, the 100th time, the 1000th time, his divine power had spread throughout the entire starry sky. Of course, the divine power after decomposition was in his own origin source starry sky, not the external starry sky. Jian Wushuang clenched his fist, and the entire origin source starry sky trembled. He even had an impulse to break his own origin source. But soon he suppressed this impulse. One force shatters all methods. It's not about breaking his own methods. Breaking his own origin source starry sky would be tantamount to self-destruction, right? Jian Wushuang put aside this plan. His divine power continued to grow stronger, and the tribulation also continued to strengthen. From the first tribulation, he began to use those primordial stones. He spent tens of thousands of them. Now, after the 1000th tribulation, he had spent billions of primordial stones. Much larger than his budget. This was just the beginning. If he completed all the tribulations, he would probably need to spend hundreds of billions of primordial stones. If it weren't for the special circumstances here, I'm afraid even 30 billion primordial stones wouldn't be enough for this time. He was still careless. If it weren't for Wu's reminder, he would probably have failed the tribulation. Without enough primordial stones in reserve, he couldn't continuously restore his origin source. Without restoring the origin source, there would be no power of all things. The cornerstone of divine power is all things. With the continuous supplementation of the power of all things, he could transform it into divine power. Treating each cleansing in this way could keep his basic divine power at its peak. And he couldn't use secret techniques. If he used secret techniques, the divine power cleansed during the tribulation would be the amplified divine power from the secret techniques. After successfully crossing the tribulation, there would be no improvement in the basic divine power. Originally, the basic divine power should be invisible in color. Using the power of the beast god would make it dark red. Using the super-eternal ancient transformation would make it blue. Now his basic divine power, without using secret techniques, had turned into a faint golden color. And with each cleansing, the color became deeper. Although the basic divine power hadn't increased, his current divine power was worth 10,000 compared to others' 2,000. The foundation of divine power had undergone a qualitative leap. He would become stronger and stronger. The 9,999th tribulation. Break! Boom! Facing the thunder arcs outside his body, he punched the ground. That was the yin-yang life and death wheel, according to what Realm King said. It was a super treasure. But he punched it and it dented. Only one tribulation left, having crossed tribulations for thousands of times. Each tribulation divided into 10,000 times. The quality of divine power changed. The last tribulation descended from the starry sky. But it wasn't his starry sky, it was the external starry sky. What? Jian Wushuang looked up at the sky in astonishment. A golden tribulation descended from the sky. Infinite power contained the highest punishment of this world. It was a tribulation beyond the highest law rules of the starry sky. It was too incredible. It might incur jealousy from the heavens. Now, Jian Wushuang wasn't afraid at all. He charged straight towards the tribulation lightning. He wanted to shatter the tribulation lightning ahead of time. The divine power that had dispersed in his origin source starry sky quickly reassembled. At the moment it returned to his body, Jian Wushuang felt unprecedentedly powerful. He clenched his fist and struck with all his might. Boom! A wisp of golden fish appeared from the tribulation, descending from the starry sky. This scene left the observers in awe. It was the first time they had ever seen a tribulation take form. No matter what happened now, Jian Wushuang wasn't surprised. He was breaking his own limits, transcending the path of cultivation within this world. Seeing unusual phenomena during a tribulation or a supreme tribulation was normal. But when he was about to attack that golden fish, he found that before he could even get close, his 5 orifices began to bleed. A strange sound echoed in his ears, a sound only he could hear. It was a voice he had never heard before, resonating in his mind. How reckless! In the starry sky, one of the 12 star spirits, Weiss, was watching Jian Wushuang's tribulation. Beside him stood a small humanoid figure with purple skin and no hair, upright ears, looking very petite. Jian Wushuang didn't understand who Weiss was talking about. Assuming it was him, he fiercely punched, continuously attacking Weiss. Weiss parried while observing Jian Wushuang. He felt that the path Jian Wushuang was taking was too harsh. In fact, the extreme freedom intent technique he had given was already very suitable for Jian Wushuang. Without becoming a god, he could still be one of the top cultivators in this world. Why make things difficult for himself? Smack! Distracted, Weiss took a punch during the fight. He wasn't angry at all. Instead, he was delighted and said, "Beerus, it seems your destructive power has increased again." After saying that, his aura increased another notch, and with a casual strike he sent Beerus flying. Jian Wushuang, on the other hand, encountered a major problem. He couldn't get close to the golden fish, and he had no way to deal with the tribulation taking form. So he returned to the ground, restored his basic divine power, then clenched his fists, causing his body to swell immensely. "Come on. Let me see just how strong you really are." He was going to rely on his physical body to withstand the attack. Could this tribulation, having taken form, even attack him? At most, it would cleanse his divine power. But then, something unexpected happened. The golden fish circled in the sky, then darted towards him at an angle he couldn't comprehend, breaking through his divine body. It was as simple as a cold spear piercing through tofu. Jian Wushuang was in disbelief. His incredibly strong divine body had been breached in a single strike. He hurriedly repaired his body, feeling a twinge of fear. But then, the golden fish continued to attack him. There was no cleansing of his divine power. Instead, he was injured repeatedly. Each time he got hurt, the golden fish would attack again before he could even take a breath. Even though he had the primordial stone and could instantly recover his divine power with a single breath, each subsequent attack grew stronger, and the speed of the attacks was increasing. He was almost at his limit. He really wanted to use the super-eternal ancient transformation to test how powerful the opponent was. But with such constant consumption, his primordial stone wouldn't suffice, and he hadn't yet crossed the supreme tribulation of the origin source. He didn't dare to continue resisting head-on. As the golden fish charged at him again, Jian Wushuang, in a fit of rage, shouted, "Super-eternal ancient transformation!" A deep blue aura surged, creating waves. Unknowingly, he had fully mastered the super-ancient transformation. He had reached a perfect state. In this perfect state, the super-eternal ancient transformation amplified his divine power 100-fold. In terms of divine power, that was 6 million. Since he was already using a secret technique, he no longer restrained himself. Tribulation armor appeared on his body. The wildly operating tribulation armor began to absorb the golden tribulation. With the tribulation armor, the perfect super-eternal ancient transformation, and the support of the origin source Tao arena, his divine power directly broke through to 18 million. The golden fish once again charged at his divine body, like a stubborn donkey heading straight for a tree trunk. Jian Wushuang raised his hand and pinched the fish with 2 fingers, then tossed it away. With a flash of his figure, he appeared behind the golden fish and threw a punch, shattering the once invincible golden fish into pieces. Countless strands of golden divine power appeared in the void. At this moment, his tribulation armor began to continuously absorb that surge of golden power. The golden divine power skyrocketed. The divine power brought by the tribulation armor instantly surpassed 2 million. The golden divine power then disappeared. The tribulation was over. Jian Wushuang felt the changes throughout his body. He clenched his fist, feeling that extraordinary divine power. He now even had the confidence to crush Qi Zhuoxiao with 1 punch. Although that seemed somewhat unlikely, Qi Zhuoxiao's peak was at 30 million divine power. He was probably not yet a match for him. But as for the complete form of Xilu, he was confident he could defeat him. As for Miesheng, this was, after all, the northern spacetime. Miesheng's strongest was no more than 20 million divine power. This time, he didn't need anyone's help. He could defeat Miesheng by himself. His confidence soared. Unprecedented. Confidence in himself. Upon noticing that Jian Wushuang had successfully passed his tribulation, everyone stopped their cultivation. The recent surge of golden divine power had also greatly benefited everyone's comprehension. Everyone, give me a quarter of an hour. Jian Wushuang landed and sat cross-legged at the center of the Yin-Yang life and death wheel, his divine power returning to the origin source starry sky. He was about to face the supreme tribulation, because it had already descended into his origin source. All 3 universes experienced changes, some significant, some minor. Countless collapsed secret realms, exploding starry sky, and debris from space-time turbulence in black holes began to invade his origin source. This was the supreme tribulation, always bringing trouble. The biggest problem among them was the celestial bodies. Formed from debris and containing the power of all things, they became special life forms. These special life forms, like pests, resided in Jian Wushuang's origin source. If they weren't eradicated, his origin source universe would shatter. This was why many universe masters failed their tribulations and saw their origin sources collapse. He initially thought that walking a different path would change the supreme tribulation, but it turned out to be the same ordeal. Unfortunately, despite all his preparations, upon entering his origin source, His divine body transformed into countless forms. He suppressed those special life forms everywhere. He didn't even need to use the super-eternal ancient transformation, as those special life forms had only a few million divine power each. He could easily shatter them with a wave of his hand. It took less than a quarter of an hour, just the time it takes to burn an incense stick, to pass the supreme tribulation. The exploding stars and ruptured black holes began to self-repair. The needed power came from the origin source. For this repair, Jian Wushuang had to feed it with primordial stones. Even so, the cost was minimal. Compared to the consumption of the divine body tribulation, this was just a drop in the bucket. After handling the origin source, he returned to his true form. Whoosh! At the moment he opened his eyes, he exhaled a heavy breath. Just as he tried to move his body, he felt a sharp pain. The pain was excruciating. During the cleansing of his divine body, he could endure it, and he eventually got used to it. But now, having lost that cleansing tempering, he felt the pain acutely. Unable to stand steadily, he collapsed directly. Everyone rushed forward, and Wu Zhuo, with reddened eyes, said, "It's over. Brother Wushuang has failed his tribulation and is going to die. Disband." Wu Zhuo wailed. Upon hearing the word, disband, Jian Wushuang immediately sat up and, with a darkened face, said, "I'm not dead yet. Even if I failed the tribulation, I'll just become a scattered tribulation cultivator. I won't die." After saying that, he really fainted. This time he was truly exhausted. After closing his eyes, only a trace of his thought power sensed the situation in front of him. Everyone exchanged insights on cultivation and tribulation experiences before putting him into the pyramid. Then Babada placed him into the rest cabin. There, a life-sustaining liquid filled the cabin, and his whole body was submerged in the green fluid. Under Babada's control, the pyramid left the Taishu secret realm. This time, their destination was the original universe. Qixin Temple. "I have returned." The others either cultivated or discussed Tao in the Chengquan Hall. They traversed the 9 great spacetimes, entering the true desolate land, where the spacetime river flowed turbulently. It was not suitable for opening new spacetime realms. When the Celestial Maiden opened the spacetime, they always chose the depths of the upstream regions, and other spacetimes were similar. Originally, in the upstream, Realm King had opened 3 long rivers of spacetime. They had all grown to the eternal realm, but they existed since ancient times. The other spacetimes were opened by those 9th tribulation experts who fell while attempting to open new spacetime realms. Most of them fell directly after opening the spacetime, just like the giant Jian Wushuang had encountered in the starry sky. He opened a world and died of exhaustion. Flying through the desolate land was the most tedious. It took an entire era for them to leave the upstream. Passing through the convergence area was the most dangerous. They didn't encounter a single cultivator on their way, nor would anyone seek trouble by going to the middle or even downstream. Of course, there were also some spacetime passages that could lead to the midstream, but those passages were all unstable. They were not as reliable as the passage crafted by Zhenling. However, there had been Realm Kings secretly helping back then. Otherwise, that old fellow, Zhenling, wouldn't have been able to handle such a big task. After the pyramid completely entered the midstream spacetime, Jian Wushuang finally woke up. This time, he was truly exhausted. He had slept for an entire era. It took him a long time to gradually recover. Having been inactive for such a long time, as soon as he got up, his body made a series of creaking sounds. He moved his shoulders slightly and hoarsely asked, "Babada, where are we?" Swish! The small Babada appeared instantly. Seeing Jian Wushuang awake, he excitedly said, "Master, you are finally awake. We have now entered the midstream spacetime, and in 400,000 years, we will reach the first tributary of the midstream spacetime. Good, not bad." Jian Wushuang removed his clothing and turned to enter a hot spring. After lying comfortably in the water, he continued to ask, "Has anything happened along the way?" 12 million years ago, in a turbulent area, we encountered a strange spacetime beast with extremely powerful divine power. It tried to attack the pyramid but was killed by Wu Zhuo. 6.8 million years ago, upon entering the midstream region, we discovered a team of 6 practitioners exploring from the upper stream, all at the 7th tribulation. However, they were all scattered tribulation practitioners. Huqing tried to persuade them, but they stubbornly pressed on and have since perished. 300,000 years ago, we found a drifting other shore flower in the spacetime and had the pyramid pluck it. 10,000 years ago, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but wave his hand to interrupt Babata. All right, there's no need to report trivial matters. You may go now. After dismissing Babata, he also got out of the hot spring. Divine power evaporated the water droplets from his body. He casually took out a blue robe and put it on. With a shift of his form, he directly entered his own cave dwelling. This was also the core, the deepest part of the pyramid. The cave dwelling was well equipped. There was even a space for practicing martial arts. Having not exercised for a long time, he soon found himself an opponent in the practice space. This opponent was himself. His true self sat cross-legged on the top of a mountain within the practice space. 2 avatars flew out from the original body and entered the valley below the mountain. The avatars did not use any secret techniques, relying purely on basic divine power for their confrontation. There was no other way. He could only have the avatars undergo trials. After all, there were no opponents. Everyone else was cultivating. He felt it inappropriate to disturb others. The avatars continuously familiarized themselves with the current divine power. The original body was also cultivating. After reaching the 7th tribulation, he had not yet had the opportunity to stabilize his realm. Once the 3 universes were repaired, they began to self-maintain. Jian Wushuang also started preparing for the 8th tribulation. He began planning his universe. The bottleneck for the 7th tribulation was 3 universes. So what about the 8th tribulation? It might be 5 universes or it could be 9. The required resources were almost beyond his capability to afford. He could only first create a framework, then gradually illuminate those universes. The origin source needed to be constructed, but he was not in a hurry to enhance his divine power. There was still a lot of blood-colored aura, and since he had reached the 7th tribulation, he could completely elevate his divine power to its peak. However, there was still plenty of time, and he did not want to improve too quickly. He wanted to give his divine body some time to breathe. After exploring for tens of millions of years, he finally managed to achieve the ultimate plan for cultivating divine power and the origin source. The target for the origin source was 9 universes. Once accomplished, he could undergo the 8th tribulation, but that goal was still very distant. As for divine power, he did not have a clear limit. However, the basic divine power must reach 5 million. 3 million for the 6th tribulation, 5 million for the 7th tribulation realm, which was not unreasonable. After figuring out the path for cultivation, he then began to study his secret techniques one by one. The super-eternal ancient transformation had already reached perfection. The remaining task was just to become familiar with it, and there was nothing more to cultivate. However, there were still many problems to solve with the Starry Sky Chronicles. Currently, the Reincarnation sword was still somewhat clumsy. However, the space-time sword had already reached the minor accomplishment stage. The Reincarnation sword was not even at the entry level, because he did not know whether he could perform it next time. As long as he could master the basics, performing it would not be difficult. The issue was how many times it could be used. Life, death, reincarnation, and space-time. Of the first 4 sword moves, only the Reincarnation sword had not reached entry level. The Life sword had already reached perfection, and the Death sword had also achieved major accomplishment. As long as the first 4 swords were all cultivated to perfection, he could perform the 5th sword move, the space-time Reincarnation sword. That would be a new height in his swordsmanship. The 5th sword would likely only be achievable once he reached the 8th tribulation. In the 7th tribulation, it was already commendable to cultivate the first 4 sword moves to perfection. This was also the goal he set for himself. Reaching perfection with the Death sword required the help of Mieshang. Of course, this help might lead to Mieshang's fall. Life and Death had both reached perfection, allowing his Reincarnation sword to achieve mastery naturally. Once he got started, everything would become simple. What had always held him back was the death sword. Once he broke through this barrier, everything else would follow. Jian Wushuang understood this principle. The Starry Sky Chronicles and the Super-Eternal Ancient Transformation were different. The Super-Eternal Ancient Transformation was a secret technique that augmented power. It was tightly bound to divine power. However, the Starry Sky Chronicles was his strongest origin source sword technique. It was primarily offensive. This difference was fundamental. He wasn't as anxious about the Super-Eternal Ancient Transformation. He always approached it with a gradual progression. Back in the underwater world, he had a complete outburst that allowed him to master it prematurely. Now that he had reached perfection, his pursuit wasn't as intense. He wasn't thinking about continuing to create and advancing towards the origin source sword Dao. The paths for the first 5 swords of his swordsmanship were clear. The 6th sword, even Eternals can be defeated. Looking back, the name seemed a bit small-minded. Now, he could already rival eternal beings. His divine power had reached 18 million at its peak. Moreover, his divine power was purer and more violent. He could completely rival ancient existences. That required the 6th sword. If the 6th sword truly emerged, he could almost cut down those in the 9th tribulation. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but laugh. The cultivation of secret techniques wasn't achieved overnight. It required a lot of time and research. Each of his incarnations began different tasks. With a complete Dao heart, he could multitask without any discomfort. Swish! His true self took out the tribulation armor and the beast god weapon. The function of the tribulation armor was actually not as effective as the beast god weapon. Unfortunately, his beast god weapon contained beast god power, which was different from the starry sky power of the super-eternal ancient transformation. Unable to achieve stacking. To stack them together, at least the power of the beast god and the power of the starry sky needed to be consistent. Currently, he could easily elevate the origin source within the beast god weapon to the perfect level of the 8th tribulation. However, this was now of little use to him. The tribulation armor was different. It enhanced his basic divine power, perfectly matching the aura of his divine power. Now, the aura of his basic divine power was golden. The tribulation armor had also turned golden. It remained consistent with him. Adding 2 million divine power was not much to him, but if he could stack it, that would be a different story. Beast God Weapon. Jian Wushuang gently stroked it, elevating the beast god origin source to its peak. When I return to Qishan Temple, I will see if I can find the remaining 8 beast god weapons. I hope that in the future, we can fight side by side again. As his fingers touched the eye of the beast god, many thoughts came to his mind. The feather continent. He thought of the trial world. When he first obtained the eye of the beast god, he only used the beast god power to suppress others within a domain. At that time, he knew very little about divine power. Even with the one-thought universe, he used it to suppress others. Later, when he realized that this was his Tao arena, he began to try to enhance his divine power. Through gradual exploration, he grasped more. After a moment of silence, he put away the beast god weapon. It was now useless. If he couldn't find the remaining 8 beast god weapons, he would give this one away or keep it as a collection. Collecting it would be somewhat wasteful. Giving it away would be better. Letting it continue to fight was the true fate of such a treasure. He put away the beast god weapon and donned the tribulation armor. Buzz! A golden aura spread out. Jian Wushuang's entire body erupted with a golden aura, surrounded by arcs of electricity. Basic divine power of 3 million, plus the 2 million brought by the tribulation armor. A total of 5 million basic divine power. The norm for the 7th tribulation realm, comparable to the threshold of the peak of the 8th tribulation realm. And he could still continue to absorb the power of the scarlet blood. Extreme Freedom Intent Technique. The Extreme Freedom Intent Technique, which he couldn't even begin to master, he had only seen used by Weiss. It appeared so ordinary, yet he was helpless against it. This was the strongest secret technique he had ever seen. Inexplicably powerful. In his mind, he constantly simulated the Extreme Freedom Intent Technique. Initially, he thought he could grasp something after reaching the seventh tribulation, but he still couldn't understand it. Unable to even get started, he couldn't see the whole picture at all. If only Weiss were still here, I could ask him for advice. Forget it. There's still plenty of time in the future. Jian Wushuang shook his head and decided not to dwell on it. Unknowingly, quite some time had already passed. It was time to go out and get some fresh air. His avatar was still cultivating and in combat. His true self leisurely entered the Chengquan Hall. Wu's was stood up first, holding a wine cup, and walked over. Wushuang, you finally showed up. I heard from Babata that you woke up a long time ago but never came out to show your face. In Chengquan Hall, Hu Qing was meditating in silence, and Wan Yen was eagerly awaiting the day he could see Yi Lingxiao's reincarnation. Wu Zua, on the other hand, was drinking alone. He couldn't get along with the lovesick Wan Yen, and Hu Qing, who was meditating, ignored him. Seeing Jian Wushuang, Wu Zua was very happy. He quickly made room and filled Jian Wushuang's cup with wine. After waking up, I still felt a bit off, so I stabilized my realm a bit, Jian Wushuang said casually as he sat down and clinked glasses with Wu Zua, chatting leisurely. At this moment, Wan Yen walked over and asked, Wushuang, how far is it to the world where Lingxiao's reincarnation is? This, Jian Wushuang didn't know either. Just as he was stunned, Babata flew over and provided the answer. There's still 100,000 years to the God Tower spacetime. Wu Zua frowned and reprimanded. Wan Yen, that's enough. You ask every few years during this journey. She won't run away, so why are you so anxious? Brother Wu Zua, you can't say that. It's normal for Wan Yen to be anxious. Jian Wushuang saw Wan Yen's embarrassed expression and comforted him. Wan Yen, don't worry. Realm King said she should retain some memories and even reminded the other party. Maybe she's waiting for you. Wan Yen's expression became excited, and he nodded vigorously. I hope so. At this moment, Hu Qing also opened his eyes. Seeing Jian Wushuang, he sensed a divine power aura not weaker than his own and said, Congratulations, Brother Wushuang. It's nothing. I just barely caught up with you. Jian Wushuang replied modestly. Wu Zua, beside them, exclaimed, Wushuang, has your basic divine power reached 15 million? No. Jian Wushuang waved his hand with a smile, but when he heard 15 million divine power, he was stunned and turned to Wu Zua, asking, Why did you mention 15 million divine power? Wu Zua scratched his head, puzzled, and pointed to Hu Qing, saying, While you were asleep, Hu Qing's basic divine power had already increased to 15 million. Just luck, thanks to those blood-colored auras. Hu Qing replied with a calm smile. Jian Wushuang was a bit surprised. He originally thought Hu Qing wouldn't use those blood-colored power, but he hadn't expected him to absorb them. Because of his arrival, the four of them rarely sat together to chat and drink. Cultivation also required a balance between relaxation and intensity. One couldn't always remain in seclusion. In fact, it was only because Wu Zua and the others had top-tier strength within the group. They weren't in a hurry. Wan Yen was preoccupied with concerns about his partner, so he didn't have the mind to cultivate. Otherwise, he would also be cultivating. Wu Zua was at the peak of the seventh tribulation, with nearly 10 million units of divine power. There was even less need to mention Hu Qing. When Jian Wushuang heard that Hu Qing's divine power reached 15 million, his head hurt. Of course, it wasn't because he was jealous of Hu Qing's superior strength. Currently, his strength couldn't be simply measured by numbers. The abundance and purity of his divine power made him unafraid of any opponent. Even if the opponent had an ancient existence with a base divine power of 20 million, he could still fight them. It was just surprising that Hu Qing chose to absorb the blood-colored aura. Hu Qing's personality was as pure as his white robes, unstained by dust. Absorbing the blood-colored aura was essentially adding karmic burdens to himself, because that blood-colored aura came entirely from the divine power and life of other cultivators. According to Hu Qing's usual character, he wouldn't absorb it, yet he chose this shortcut. Probably wasn't that simple. Jian Wushuang didn't ask much, keeping his thoughts to himself. 100,000 years passed quickly. Jian Wushuang and his companions often drank wine and discussed the Tao. When they encountered some strange phenomena, they would pause briefly but not for too long. They didn't have the leisure for prolonged breaks, especially since they needed to find Wanyan's Tao companion. As they delved deeper into the middle spacetime, they encountered more and more cultivators. Along the way, Wuxia personally captured some universe masters of the Seventh Tribulation, searched their souls, and then released them. They injected some information about the middle spacetime into Babata's light brain. Soon, the entire structure and some background of the middle spacetime's forces were clarified. The middle spacetime river had many tributaries, unlike the upper spacetime, which had only 9 tributaries, many of which were created by superpowerful beings. In contrast, no one opened up the middle spacetime river. It was entirely formed naturally. Each tributary contained a spacetime. These spacetimes intersected and advanced together, each at its peak. There were a total of 36 spacetimes. Among them, the Shinta spacetime ranked last. This spacetime only had the foundation of an 8-star sect like the ancient moon spacetime, let alone compared to those eternal realms. The entire middle spacetime probably couldn't gather 50 strong beings of the 8 tribulations realm. However, one aspect was much stronger than the 9 upper spacetimes. Most of the 8th tribulation powerhouses here were universe masters. Especially in the leading middle mainstream spacetime, the abyssal spacetime, which had 3 universe masters of the 8th tribulation, divided into elder, middle-aged, and young. Although there were few strong individuals, there were many treasures. The life force was sufficient to supply those scattered tribulation cultivators. Even the scat-aired tribulation cultivators often maintained their peak state. This was an era of youth. The upper reaches seemed like a stable state after a period of expansion, while the middle reaches appeared younger with less deep foundations. As for the lower reaches of the original universe, they were rather lacking. They belonged to the infancy stage. There were only a few universe masters. Babata, is there any news from Moro spacetime? Jian Wushuang couldn't help but ask about the Moro spacetime of the past. At the moment he heard this name, Wu's expression also darkened. Moro spacetime, that was from an even more distant era. But compared to the forces of the upper reaches, it wasn't actually that distant. We have detected it. Moro spacetime has now been renamed to the Xianxia secret realm, an ultimate spacetime secret realm, more advanced than the upper-level spacetime secret realms, and extremely dangerous. According to records, more than 10 universe masters of the 7th tribulation level have fallen within it. The Xianxia secret realm. There was a look of reminiscence in Wu's eyes as he tried to recall the Moro spacetime of the past. He was still very young at that time. After becoming a named disciple of Qixin, he learned that there were many other spacetime regions outside. But he had never gone out. Crossing spacetime required the power of a universe master. No one had predicted the tribulation of that time. It was just a creation of Qixin Temple. Wu's didn't even participate in the final battle. Though he always said otherwise, deep down, he knew why he hadn't participated. He was afraid. With countless universe masters falling, even as an emperor, he was terrified, hiding in Qixin Temple, afraid to venture out. Just the aftermath had left him severely injured. Seeing Wu Yin's somewhat embarrassed expression, Jian Wushuang patted his shoulder reassuringly and said, "We've grown stronger. There's no need to worry." Upon reaching the Shinta spacetime and finding Wu Tian's Tao companion, they decided to pay a visit to the Xianxia secret realm where Moro spacetime once existed, to see what it was like and to understand why it had been destroyed, and to search for traces of Miesheng. It would be beneficial to them all. The pyramid continued to rotate, piercing through spacetime, completely entering the world where cultivators resided. In the gaps between these spacetime rivers lay desolate lands. These desolate lands were barren because the surrounding spacetime had absorbed all the power and origin source, leaving the land barren. Only desolation remained. Yet, amidst this desolation, there was still some vitality. Some universe masters were attempting to shuttle through to other spacetimes. That wasn't particularly dangerous. But those who aimed to ascend upstream were having a rough time. Apart from Reincarnation, it was almost impossible to ascend upstream. unless their divine power was extremely strong, and they had treasures with them. Going against the current was too difficult. Unlike going downstream, initially, Fan Tianfeng had ridden a supreme treasure, bringing along a group of powerhouses, even dragging along the flame god. After countless epochs, they finally reached the original universe. We're only a stick of incense away from the Shunta spacetime. Wang Yan was so excited that he stood up. Babata continued his explanation. As the name suggests, the Shunta world possesses a leaning tower that has existed since ancient times. It's a treasure crafted by a super-powerful being, reigning over time in the Shunta world for a period surpassing the lifespan of beings within it. Currently, it's occupied by the Ancient Tower Divine Kingdom. The Ancient Tower Divine Kingdom is home to an 8th tribulation powerhouse, with divine power estimated to be between 6 to 8 million. Over 4 billion epochs ago, they lost their origin universe while exploring the Niantian's secret realm. Listening to the introduction of the Shinta spacetime, everyone seemed quite relaxed. Because they needed to halt for a while, after Yi Lingxiao's rebirth and with his new identity, it wasn't feasible for him to just leave with Wang Yan directly. Certainly, they had to stay for a period of time. Moreover, they needed to visit the Niantian secret realm after the destruction of the Moro spacetime. They would also need to pause for a while. They informed the others as well, inviting anyone who wanted to take a breather outside to come along. However, the others were all busy digesting the divine power they had absorbed and were not interested in this. After entering the annual secret realm, just notify them. The Shinta spacetime, the rotating pyramid sliced through spacetime like thin paper, fully entering the Shinta spacetime. In the midstream or middle-level spacetime, strong practitioners were scarce, and most of the spacetime was unified by one power. Because the external pressure was too great, if you were not unified internally, you would be attacked by other spacetimes. Unlike the 9 major spacetimes, where there were many strong practitioners, making it impossible to unite as one. Moreover, their foundations were extremely deep, making it impossible to be invaded. After entering the Shinta spacetime, Jian Wushuang and the others truly had their eyes opened. At the edge of the spacetime, there was a super-large formation guarding it. There was also a vast army of practitioners guarding it. It was like an iron barrel. However, for true strong practitioners, entering the Shinta spacetime was as simple as drinking water. After the pyramid broke through spacetime, it hid its presence. Otherwise, these practitioners would have been startled. Although it seemed strict on the surface, it was not completely closed. There were some passages for entry, but that was too troublesome. If they wanted to take the official route, it would probably waste decades of their time. This time was actually nothing to them, but now Wang Yan didn't want to wait even a moment. Wang Yan, can you sense the karmic connection of Yi Lingxiao now? Jian Wushuang asked. After Yi Lingxiao was reincarnated, he had the memories of his past life, so naturally, he also had their karmic connection. So they could search through the karmic connection. But they couldn't find it across spacetime. So they had to enter the Shinta spacetime first to find Yi Lingxiao's exact location. Wang Yan's breathing was a bit rapid, clearly somewhat nervous. He moved his mental power and began to search for Yi Lingxiao through the karmic connection. He frowned, then said in surprise, "It seems to be in the capital of the Ancient Tower Divine Kingdom, and the presence is somewhat chaotic. Wushuang, let's go to the capital of the Ancient Tower Divine Kingdom first." Jian Wushuang nodded and instructed Babata to directly enter the capital. The movement within spacetime was very fast. Moreover, the Shinta spacetime was not very large. It was about the same size as the ancient Wood continent back then. The pyramid maintained at black hole level speed, allowing them to traverse the entire Shinta spacetime in just one day. Heading to the core of the Ancient Tower Divine Kingdom took about 5 hours. They didn't have the heart to look at the scenery of the Ancient Tower Divine Kingdom and went straight toward the kingdom. The 4 of them stood in front of the sky curtain, observing their positions. 5 hours passed in the blink of an eye. In other words, it was an ownerless aura. Like rootless water, it was drying up. In this situation, either Yi Lingxiao was about to perish or he had stayed here for a while and now left. Originally wanting to keep a low profile, Jian Wushuang no longer hid. With a flash, he dragged Wan Yen away from the pyramid. Mid-level spacetime was unlike the upper-level spacetime. Occasionally, two mysterious seventh tribulation experts might appear without raising suspicion. But it was different here. Once they appeared, it would likely arouse everyone's suspicion. They didn't plan to stay here long and naturally didn't want to cause trouble, just wanted to hide themselves. But now they were discovered. Hiding would only alert the enemy, so it was better to reveal themselves. Swish! The two appeared above the 6 great secret realms. The aura of the 7th tribulation realm was directly exposed. The divine power was restrained. If they exposed their divine power, the 8th tribulation expert of the Shinta spacetime would be too scared to come out. After revealing the aura of the 7th tribulation realm, the ancestor indeed relaxed his vigilance. It wasn't really vigilance, just not as apprehensive. Two fellow Taoists. Why have you come to my Shinta spacetime? A steady voice resounded through the world, but only the two of them could hear it. The other party was very cautious and did not ask much, just inquired why they were here. Seeing Wan Yin's bewildered expression, Jian Wushuang stepped forward. We're here to find a friend. Apologies for the rudeness just now. Their previous actions were indeed a bit rash, directly using mental power to probe the other party's lair. Crash! A hole broke in the spacetime, and an elderly face appeared before them. It was the 8th tribulation expert of the Shinta kingdom. Senior Shinta. Jian Wushuang slightly cupped his hands. The other party's Dao name was Shinta, and the name of the Shinta spacetime also came from his Dao name. This was very common. Just like ancient moon spacetime, the term ancient moon also came from the celestial maiden. Earlier, it was called celestial maiden spacetime, but it was later changed. Shinta noticed that the two were quite familiar with the place, but couldn't discern their identities, which made him a bit surprised. He continued, "Oh, since you're looking for someone, why not give me a name? In my spacetime, there is no one who can't be found." These words had a hint of hostility, clearly still holding a grudge over the earlier incident. This was actually normal. Jian Wushuang gave an awkward smile, glanced at Wan Yen beside him, and signaled for him to speak. He didn't know the cause and effect of Yi Lingxiao or her specific location. "I want to find this person." Wan Yen casually drew a line, directly extracting a bundle of causal aura and tossing it to Shinta. This aura contained the cause and effect of Yi Lingxiao. If the other party truly knew, that would be best. Moreover, the location of Yi Lingxiao was in the core of the 6 great secret realms, evidently also a member of the royal family of Shinta Kingdom. Realm King hadn't broken his word. Yi Lingxiao's reincarnated identity was not inferior to the Yi family of the past. Shinta became even more puzzled upon seeing a piece of causal aura. After taking it, he just glanced at it, his expression unchanged, and said with a faint smile, "You too must be mistaken. This aura seems to have never been to my Shinta spacetime." "Is that so?" Jian Wushuang's face darkened. He could tell the other party was lying. The only reason they were being so polite now was out of respect for Yi Lingxiao. If they dared to hide anything, they wouldn't hesitate to force their way in and search. Don't doubt their strength. Even if all the strong men of the middle-tier spacetime combined, they wouldn't be a match for Jian Wushuang alone. Shinta walked out directly from the spacetime tunnel. Standing in front of the two was his true form. Divine power slowly surged, dark flames filling the spacetime. He stared at them firmly and said coldly, "Yes, she is not here." Buzz. Jian Wushuang had already transmitted a message to Wan Yen, telling him to go in directly. He would block Shinta himself. He also promptly shattered the super array of the 6 great secret realms, all in the blink of an eye. Before Shinta could react, he found that the area behind him was already in ruins. The array was broken in an instant. Wan Yen directly entered the 6 great secret realms. Jian Wushuang then blocked Shinta. "You'd better not make a move. It will be good for everyone this way." Clang. He drew his sword. When he drew his sword, the pyramid also appeared from the void. Hu Qing and Wu Zhuo also stepped out. The two of them only revealed their basic divine power, and it immediately subdued Shinta. Wu's divine power was decent, not as strong as Shinta's. However, Hu Qing's basic divine power was over 10 million. You? Who exactly are you? This time, Shinta was completely subdued, continuously retreating, but was blocked by Wuxia from behind. Jian Wushuang toyed with the tribulation sword, originally intending to scare him a bit. He didn't expect Hu Qing and Wuxia to come, which frightened Shinta senseless. Jian Wushuang then put away the tribulation sword and said, "Senior Shinta, don't be afraid. As I said, we are only here to find someone. And it looks like the person we're looking for is related to you. It might even be a good thing for you. Don't you think?" Shinta swallowed hard. When he saw the cause and effect, he knew who Jian Wushuang and the others were looking for. And his relationship with that person was indeed significant. She was his own granddaughter, a direct descendant. It was indeed a good thing for him. Shinta's figure trembled slightly. First he looked at Hu Qing. With just one glance, his mind couldn't help but tremble. He couldn't see through her at all, but he could guess that her divine power exceeded 10 million. He was an 8th Tribulation Universe Master, much stronger than him at his peak. Being able to come to the 6 secret realms silently, she was definitely not an ordinary person. "Stop looking. She really isn't here." Shinta's expression turned somewhat forlorn. Wuxia thought Shinta was lying again and threatened, "Old man, don't try to fool us or else." He finished with a wicked smile and glanced at the 6 secret realms. "She's not here." Wanyan emerged from the 6 secret realms with a serious expression. He turned to Shinta, his voice icy. "Still unwilling to speak?" Patience had its limits. Jian Wushuang was also nearing his limit. He slightly restrained his aura and said gently, "Senior Shinta, if there's something difficult for you to say, just tell us, and we will solve it for you. As long as you tell us the whereabouts of that person." "Tell?" Shinta's eyes moved, and he was indeed somewhat tempted. But thinking about the involved matters, his face turned ashen, and he closed his eyes. This puzzled Jian Wushuang and the others, not even willing to speak until death. Jian Wushuang lost his patience, rushed directly in front of Shinta, unleashed his divine power to 10 million, and placed one hand on his head, just a hair's breadth away. His tone changed dramatically, threatening, "If you still don't speak, I don't mind searching your soul. Don't think that because you are an 8 tribulation, I can't do anything to you." At these words, Shinta's face changed instantly. He hurriedly took half a step back and exclaimed in surprise, "You're not a 7th tribulation? I am a 7th tribulation universe master. But that doesn't stop me from searching your soul." Jian Wushuang slowly lowered his hand and continued, "Don't doubt it. You can try if you like." Shinta stared at Jian Wushuang, truly panicking this time. He didn't dare to gamble. "I can tell you." In the end, he chose to compromise. Seeing Shinta compromise, Wu's expression softened. He immediately put on a smile, patted Shinta on the shoulder, and praised, "That's more like it. Cooperate with us, and you won't suffer any loss. But you must agree to one condition of mine." Shinta's expression changed, appearing somewhat resolute. "What condition?" Wu's face darkened, knowing it wasn't simple. Shinta indeed directed his gaze at Jian Wushuang. He could see that among these people Jian Wushuang was the leader. "You must guarantee the safety of Shinta's spacetime." After a long silence, Shinta stated his condition. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. "That's simple." He seemed to understand Shinta's concerns. Shinta's spacetime was at the bottom of the middle ranks, probably already targeted by others. The significance of Yi Lingxiao was likely great and had been sold out by Shinta. Wanyan also nodded at this time. "As long as you tell her whereabouts, I can guarantee that Shinta's spacetime will be absolutely safe." He was now a 7th tribulation with a basic divine power of 3 million, and with secret techniques was on par with Shinta. Moreover, with Jian Wushuang and the others around, protecting Shinta spacetime was not a small problem. Seeing Jian Wushuang nod, Shinta divulged everything. These 8th tribulation of the middle-level spacetime had more backbone compared to the upper-level spacetime. If it were the upper-level spacetime, they would have confessed everything long ago, and there wouldn't be so many issues. Losing the origin source universe was a death threat to those at the 8th tribulation level. Without the origin source universe, there was no path forward. Living became a torment. But in the upper-level spacetimes, those at the 8th tribulation level who were wandering tribulations always thought of ways to prolong their lives, trying to survive by any means. However, Xianxia did not think this way. His current reason for living was to protect Xianxia spacetime. Upon hearing this explanation, everyone changed their views about him. From the bottom of their hearts, they felt a newfound respect, which showed on their faces. This made Jian Wushuang think of Qixin. Before undergoing his tribulation, Qixin chose self-dissolution. He simply did not want to face himself after failure. Life. Rebirth. This news had not yet reached the mid-level spacetime, otherwise these people would not have given up so early. When Wanyan heard this, although anxious, she did not interrupt. The person you are looking for is actually my granddaughter. Her name is Gu Shower. As Xianxia spoke, there was a proud glint in his eyes. Upon hearing this name, Wanyan couldn't help but mutter, "Shower? She must be a reincarnation, right?" "Yes," Wanyan replied calmly, without any concealment. Xianxia chuckled. "Actually, I have known for a long time that she is a reincarnation, but she now carries the blood of my Gu family. Even if she is a reincarnation, in this life, she is still a member of the Gu family and a comfort to me in my old age." This made Wanyan a bit uncomfortable, but after thinking about it, she did not argue. When Jian Wushuang heard this name, he immediately communicated telepathically with Babata, asking him to investigate Gu Shower. Such a task was simple for Babata, who could easily capture a strong figure from Xianxia spacetime to accomplish it. No need to let Xianxia toy with them. "Master." Babata quickly gathered the information and relayed it all to Jian Wushuang. After listening, Jian Wushuang's expression became a bit grim, thinking to himself, "So that's how it is." Upon learning the truth, he felt that Xianxia's earlier words were just an excuse to avoid trouble from them, because the reincarnation of Yi Lingxiao had already been given away by Xianxia. To put it nicely, she was married off. To put it bluntly, she was given away. He initially wanted to tell Wanyan directly, but feared she might act impulsively upon hearing it. So he let Xianxia explain it slowly. After finishing the prelude, the following events became even more dramatic. In her reincarnation, Gu Shower possessed the perfect body of an emperor crafted by Realm King. In just 10,000 years, she became an emperor. In less than an epoch, she reached the 4th tribulation realm and became a universe master. She once crossed 4 tribulations at once. She was the pride of the entire Xianxia spacetime. Xianxia highly valued this granddaughter. Originally, they intended to groom her as their successor. However, jealousy shattered this plan. 10,000 years ago, Gu Shower, who had already reached the pinnacle of the 4th tribulation realm, followed her friend to explore the outskirts of a mysterious realm and was targeted. Tidal spacetime. Located on the other side of the river of time and space, it was extremely powerful, ranking 7th in the entire mid-level spacetime. It was home to a peak 8th tribulation realm expert. There were also 5 7th tribulation universe masters within this spacetime. It was a top-tier spacetime. Yi Lingxiao was noticed by a 7th tribulation universe master who proactively brought up a marriage proposal. Xianxia originally disagreed. It was practically akin to robbery. Moreover, Yi Lingxiao's talent was exceptional, about to reach the 5th tribulation realm. In the future, she could at least grow to the 7th tribulation realm. She would be the revival master of Xianxia spacetime. How could they send her away? Sigh. Xianxia sighed. That 7th tribulation universe master Hebedong had a unique status. If I hadn't agreed at the time, I'm afraid. And you still agreed. Wanyan fumed with rage after listening. This happened 10,000 years ago. No wonder her aura disappeared so quickly. If they were any later, they would have had to search from one spacetime to another. Anything could happen in a span of 10,000 years. Wanyan could hardly bear to imagine. Jian Wushuang patted his shoulder. He had the most experience in such matters, but even he didn't know how to comfort him. All they could do now was save her. First, they needed to bring Yi Lingxiao back. If that didn't quell the anger, they could kill that seventh tribulation expert. That was doable. That was all he could do for Wan Yen. Time couldn't be reversed. Tidal space-time. Hebedong. Wan Yen's face showed killing intent, and he gritted his teeth. She is your own granddaughter. As you said, she carries the blood of your Gu family. How could you bear to send her to an old seven tribulation guy? Shinta looked troubled at these words. Jian Wushuang and Wuzhua felt slightly wounded, realizing they had also become old guys. But that wasn't important. What mattered was that if Shinta wasn't afraid of death, why would he compromise? Could it be that a seventh tribulation, for a woman, could destroy Shinta spacetime? That was unlikely. There were 36 tributaries in the mid-level. Tidal spacetime was just seventh, not first. Even if it were first, it wouldn't turn the world upside down. There must be hidden reasons. That was why Shinta hesitated so long to speak. Because of abyssal spacetime. Shinta's face showed fear as he continued. Tidal spacetime is not frightening, Hebedong is not frightening, I could crush him with a flip of my hand. But his sister is the saintess of abyssal spacetime, and the partner of the abyssal lord. And their son is also an 8th tribulation universe master. In other words, Hebedong's nephew was an 8th tribulation universe master. No wonder he dared to be so arrogant. Jian Wushuang had substantial information about abyssal spacetime. The abyssal lord was likely a peak 8th tribulation expert. The abyssal demoness, the abyssal lord's Tao companion, was also an 8th tribulation master. Their son was an 8th tribulation universe master. The combined strength of these three universe masters made abyssal spacetime the overlord of the mid-level. No wonder tidal spacetime was so arrogant. Hebedong dared to act so boldly. He came demanding someone. Jian Wushuang didn't care about that. Even if they were peak 8 tribulation with at most 15 million divine power, he could defeat them with ease. It's a minor issue. Jian Wushuang shook his head and said, Wan Yen, let's go to tidal spacetime. At this moment, Wan Yen felt like he had swallowed a fly, furiously glaring at Shinta, but he eventually nodded. Minor issue. Shinta's face lit up with joy, sensing a turning point, and he had never heard of people like Jian Wushuang from mid-level spacetime. They must be from higher spacetime. With such backing, Shinta spacetime also had hope. Dear friends, if you forcibly rescue Shower, please don't go back on your word. Shinta's tone was pleading. After learning Yi Lingxiao's whereabouts, he had long lost patience. Moreover, Yi Lingxiao had been sent away by Shinta, so he wouldn't show the other party any mercy. Humph! He snorted coldly. I need to consider your conditions carefully now. Whether I agree or not depends on Gu Shower. If not, then... Shinta's expression changed dramatically as he looked at Jian Wushuang in disbelief. How could a super-strong person with immense divine power not keep his promise? This was not what he had expected. This? Shinta's face turned awkward. Wuzhua, standing beside, mocked. What this? Go home and wait for the news. Even Hu Qing didn't come out to say anything good this time. Speaking of which, the reason Yi Lingxiao ended up like this was because of Hu Qing. But overall, it was still the Realm King. If he had informed them earlier, this wouldn't have happened. The main issue was that Realm King didn't take Wan Yen seriously. If it were him or Wuzhua and Hu Qing, they probably wouldn't have dared to do this. Although he was the Realm King of the Northern Spacetime, he had no combat power. He still needed them to do things. How could he dare offend them? Let's go. The four of them didn't say anything more and directly entered the pyramid. Babata, activate secret realm speed. No need to hide our presence. Head to tidal spacetime at the fastest speed. Jian Wushuang gave the order directly. Yes. Babata executed the command immediately. With the target locked, the secret realm speed could turn the twisted spacetime into a straight line. The speed was so fast that it surpassed the existence of eternity. Of course, the consumption was also great. The secret realm speed, if sustained for 1,000,000 years, would consume a black shining essence. From Shinta spacetime to tidal spacetime was not too far. It only took 3 days. If it were at black hole speed, it would take at least several years. The midstream of the spacetime river was much larger than the upstream. But there were too many desolate areas. The tributaries were also smaller. But the range was larger. The downstream was even larger, bigger than the mid and upper streams combined. As for the end of the stream, they had never been there, so naturally they didn't know. It was only heard that it was the same as the starry sky. Unfortunately, no one had been there. It was all hearsay. If there were an opportunity, Jian Wushuang would definitely investigate it. Buzz! The spinning pyramid broke through everything, and all the secret realms blocking the way were shattered. After leaving the Shun-Ta spacetime, it burst out with dazzling light in the desolate land, attracting the attention of many powerful beings. They had never heard of such a flying treasure before. They all thought it was a treasure newly obtained by some super-strong person. Through the sky, Jian Wushuang saw these reckless universe masters and showed no mercy, directly charging and crushing all those universe masters. In an instant, hundreds of super-strong beings fell. The sky turned blood-red. Their arrogance was understandable, because although the pyramid's aura was very strong, its power was not apparent. This time, those people did not need to see. They all perished directly. Heibadong should not be among them. Otherwise, it would have been too easy for him. Wu's was sensed the divine power aura outside through the sky. Wanyan had a cold expression, also with some excitement, finally seeing it again. Don't worry. We'll reach their territory in 3 breaths. Jian Wushuang, with his hands behind his back, had a sharp gaze. Boom! While speaking, the pyramid had already smashed through spacetime and entered the Hai family's territory. If not for the concern of accidentally hurting Yi Lingxiao, he would have had Babata control the pyramid to directly crash into the Hai family's territory. How dare you! An angry voice came from the depths of the territory. A young man in golden robes flew out from below, realizing that the small team that had just gone out had all perished. Those were 3 universe masters of the 7th tribulation realm. Just perished like that? It must have been done by an 8th tribulation realm. This didn't even need guessing. The Hai family's old ancestor, Sea Emperor, one of the most powerful 8th tribulation realm beings in the mid-level spacetime. A peak 8th tribulation realm universe master. An existence with divine power surpassing 10 million. Don't you dare show your face? The Sea Emperor's furious strike directly hit the top of the pyramid. In private, he had already sent a message to his daughter in abyssal spacetime. Because this time, the pyramid came aggressively, definitely having the confidence to hold him back. He dared not be careless. If he had known that there were 2 super-strong beings in the pyramid who could easily crush him, he would have been scared and fled long ago. The Sea Emperor, with divine power surpassing 10 million, made friends with those stronger than him. Although he had a few enemies of similar strength, none dared to be so bold as to come to his territory. After his strike, he wanted to test the pyramid. Unexpectedly, the pyramid remained motionless, and its power even visibly grew stronger. The previous strike had been absorbed by the pyramid. While the Sea Emperor was still astonished, Jian Wushuang and his companions appeared. The figures of the 4 appeared, directly sealing off the spacetime. Their opponent had no way to escape. Wanyan, do you want me to accompany you down? I can handle it myself. Wanyan only cast a cold glance at the Sea Emperor before directly entering the Sea family's territory. Jian Wushuang originally wanted to accompany him, worried about encountering danger. After all, this was the enemy's stronghold. They couldn't afford to be careless. They couldn't afford to make a mistake in this critical moment. The Sea Emperor was somewhat astonished to see the 4 appear because he didn't recognize them at all. Moreover, it seemed that they didn't take him seriously, directly entering the territory right under his nose. Just from sensing their aura, he couldn't see through any of them. Jian Wushuang and his companions did not expose their origin source, but instead released their divine power. Wu's divine power was comparable to the peak of the 8 tribulations realm. As for Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, there was no need to mention. Their divine power alone was enough to frighten their opponent. Suddenly, 3 peak 8 tribulations realm powerhouses appeared. How could the Sea Emperor not be surprised? Who are you? The Sea Emperor's face was grim. The sudden threat made his divine power tremble, and the surrounding space-time was sealed off, leaving him with no way to escape. Jian Wushuang's gaze was cold as he stared at him and said, "If you want to fight, I can accompany you. If you don't dare, then stand still." He did not start a massacre. They would decide what to do after finding their person. Everything depended on Wanyan's decision. Dao friends, if there is any offense, why not speak it out? At this moment, the Sea Emperor was thoroughly scared. It wasn't his fault for being timid. Jian Wushuang and his companions intended to intimidate him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so obedient. I said, "No nonsense." Jian Wushuang's face turned cold, and the power of the starry sky directly impacted the Sea Emperor's divine body. With just a glance, the Sea Emperor was severely injured. The Sea Emperor didn't dare to move at all. The pressure Jian Wushuang gave him reminded him of the Abyssal Lord. That was his son-in-law, even more powerful. Even if the Abyssal Lord came, he probably wouldn't be able to stop Jian Wushuang and his companions. After Wanyan descended, he directly rushed towards the depths of the territory. Sensing that familiar aura, he couldn't wait to break into a small courtyard. Bang! He pushed the door open and entered. What greeted his eyes was a woman in a black dress, holding a baby. Because of the turmoil outside, the baby kept crying. The woman in the black dress isolated the external disturbances, coaxing the baby to sleep. "Shower!" Wanyan's voice trembled slightly. Seeing the baby and the doting expression in Yi Lingxiao's eyes, he was completely stunned. At this moment, his heart felt as if it were being cut by knives. The woman in the black dress, upon seeing Wanyan burst through the door, looked surprised. She then gathered divine power with one hand and assumed a defensive posture. Clatter! At this time, Jian Wushuang also arrived in the courtyard, carrying Sea Emperor and bringing Hu Qing and Wu Zhuo along. He turned to glance at Wanyan, then looked at the reincarnated Yi Lingxiao. They all stood there in a daze. "What's going on?" Sea Emperor couldn't help but speak up. "Fellow Taoists, if I have offended you, kill me then. This has nothing to do with the rest of my Sea family. It has nothing to do with them." Wu Zhuo said coldly, "You stole my brother's woman. How could this have nothing to do with it?" Sea Emperor looked troubled. A woman. He had taken many women, indeed guilty of that. But the woman in the black dress before him was his daughter-in-law. She wasn't stolen. He had personally gone to propose marriage, and the other party had agreed. "Shower. Don't you remember me?" Wanyan asked in disbelief. The woman in the black dress was the reincarnated Yi Lingxiao, now known as Gu Shower. Seeing Wanyan's anguished expression, she was somewhat moved. But seeing Sea Emperor being restrained, she shouted angrily, "I don't know you." Her gaze towards Wanyan also turned hostile. This? Jian Wushuang suddenly remembered what the Realm King had said. A perfect emperor's body. A perfect opportunity. But nothing was mentioned about memories. This causal force was also a guiding method given by the Realm King. Jian Wushuang suddenly understood. Silently, he thought to himself, "This is bad. The Realm King has misled us." Things had come to this point. They couldn't back down now. Wanyan, act quickly. Take her away first. Wu Zhuo also understood, knowing they were tricked by the Realm King, but there was no other way now. They could only take Gu Shower away first. Otherwise, coming here would make them look too foolish. Wanyan stepped forward but faced intense resistance from Gu Shower. No one could understand his feelings at this moment. With a swift chop, he knocked her unconscious. Holding Gu Shower, he felt as if she were a stranger, remembering the recent scene. Seeing Wanyan succeed, Jian Wushuang released Sea Emperor and left the courtyard with Wanyan. He ordered Babata to summon the pyramid to this place. Buzz! The pyramid descended, and a triangular plate floated in the air. Wanyan, carrying Gu Shower, stood on it. Jian Wushuang and the others stepped back and followed him onto the plate. At this moment, an aura erupted from within the clan grounds. "Shower!" Someone was also calling out Gu Shower's name. Jian Wushuang's eyes burned with anger. and anger directed at the realm king. Now, he could only take it out on this person. Without waiting for the person to approach, he struck out with his palm, destroying the courtyard. The abandoned baby was caught securely by Wuxia. With a single strike, the Emperor desperately tried to block it. Otherwise, that universe master of the seventh tribulation realm would have perished. Jian Wuxuang glanced coldly and then led his people into the pyramid. Then they fled in haste. Their appearance seemed fearful. Fear of being discovered by others. Fear. Fear of what? They had sought Yi Lingxiao openly, but ended up sneaking around like thieves. Especially Wan Yen, who was startled and surprised. Through the sky screen, he glanced at the Xi family's grounds below, seeing Hebedong rushing over in sorrow. That universe master of the seventh tribulation realm. He doesn't look very old. Jian Wuxuang muttered to himself, stroking his chin. Seeing Hebedong's appearance made it hard for him to believe that the other was a domineering figure. And he lost the will to kill. In the sky screen, the Emperor used divine power to restrain Hebedong. This matter is not something you can handle. Leave it to your father, and I will definitely give you an explanation. The Emperor urged earnestly. But Hebedong's eyes were red, watching the pyramid disappear before him, collapsing to the ground. After the pyramid left, the Emperor also let go, releasing the time and space restraint. He felt more confident now. Looking at his son, he sighed. They are super strong beings from upstream spacetime, stronger than the Abyssal Lord. We can't afford to offend them. To this day, he still couldn't believe he would encounter such a powerful enemy. Moreover, he didn't understand why they were targeting tidal spacetime. He was half convinced by the earlier words, and seeing the other party take away his daughter-in-law, he was even more astonished. Gu Shower came from Shunta spacetime. She met Hebedong because of the Nian secret realm. Back then, Gu Shower fell into a forbidden place, and it was Hebedong who conveniently saved her. Afterwards, the two got to know each other. They had a grand wedding 10,000 years ago. Now they already had a daughter. There had never been any discord between them. If there had been, it was before the wedding when Shinta was very reluctant. He wanted to groom his daughter to become his successor, but she ended up marrying Hebedong of tidal spacetime. But this couldn't be considered a robbery. It was a mutual agreement between the two. Hai Huang pondered over the events of today and decided to send a message to Shinta. At this moment, Shinta was leisurely sitting on his throne, with a black-robed figure below him reporting on the matters from tidal spacetime. The Hai family territory had been invaded by a mysterious strong enemy, and they couldn't resist. Currently, the entire spacetime was sealed. Haha, good. Shinta stood up in delight. It would be best if the entire Hai family were destroyed, so Shower can return to Shunta spacetime. But before he could celebrate for long, he received a message from Hai Huang, and his expression turned cold. Gu Shower had been taken. Even the baby was not left behind. 3 universe masters of the Hai family were dead, along with dozens of 6th tribulation experts. The news spread quickly, shaking the entire mid-level spacetime. A mysterious golden head. An unknown super-strong enemy. Upper-level spacetime? That was a mystery to them all, because it was too difficult to travel from mid-level to upper-level spacetime. Only an 8th Tribulation Universe Master could do it, and they had to be a top-tier 8th Tribulation Universe Master. In mid-level spacetime, those Universe Masters with such power were the pillars of their respective spacetimes and would not risk venturing to the upper levels. After all, he couldn't set his mind at ease. Some scattered Tribulation warriors risked their lives to explore. However, most returned without success and some were completely lost. Regarding the upstream spacetime, they only knew about the existence of 9 major spacetimes. Countless super-powerful beings resided there. As for other details, they were completely in the dark. Moreover, most of this information was recorded in their inheritances. No one in the entire midstream spacetime had ever been to the upper level. Now, suddenly hearing that a super-powerful being from the upper-level spacetime had descended, they were all very excited. Their curiosity about the upstream spacetime was their greatest motivation. Everyone wanted to reach higher places. But Xianxia didn't think that way, as he could hardly protect himself. He only wanted his daughter to return and become his successor. 3 universe masters of the 7th tribulation realm died? Xianxia's eyes sparkled with joy, but when he heard that Hebedong was still alive, his expression darkened again. As long as Hebedong wasn't dead, Gu Shower wouldn't give up. As for the dead universe masters of the 7th tribulation realm, they had nothing to do with him. He didn't have the ability to spy on tidal spacetime, and the other side had abyssal spacetime as a powerful backer. Almost no one dared to pay attention to tidal spacetime. He actually survived. Xianxia frowned, his tone filled with reluctance. Recalling the expressions Jian Wushuang and others had shown in front of him, they should have been ruthless people. How could they not have killed Hebedong? The current situation was still acceptable to him. His daughter had been taken away. Originally, it was a bad thing, but it also depended on who had taken it. If it was a super strong person from the upper reaches of spacetime, then it was hard to say. If my Gu family were to secure this great mountain, it might be even better. Xianxia's eyes flickered as he pondered this matter. In the desolate lands outside of tidal spacetime, a pyramid floated in mid-air, remaining motionless. Having left tidal spacetime, Jian Wushuang stopped. Inside the Chengquan hall of the pyramid, the 4 of them gathered together. Hui Qing held a baby, while Wan Yen looked at the unfamiliar woman before him with a distressed expression. There was a significant connection in karma, but the other party simply did not remember him. It was as if she were a stranger. Wan Yen, what should we do now? Jian Wushuang glanced at Wan Yen, who also had no idea. They couldn't just snatch someone and stand there watching. It was supposed to be a natural course of events. But Gu Shower's resistance made them all passive. It made them seem like heinous criminals, robbing someone else's Dao companion. Jian Wushuang had done many such things before, even encountering situations where others tried to snatch his bride. But without the excitement, he had never felt this awkward. Because the other party was unwilling to leave. When he had taken Gong Miaoi at Qishan Temple, she had been very cooperative. This had avoided any awkwardness. Now, this was a situation he was encountering for the first time. Wan Yen blinked, took a deep breath, and pointed a finger. A beam of light shot out from his fingertip and entered Gu Shower's body. After the light entered, it didn't take long for her to slowly awaken. Her eyelashes fluttered before she opened her eyes. What she saw were 4 faces. One was a young man with blue hair, and another was a middle-aged man in a yellow robe with a sallow complexion. Only Wan Yen looked like a normal person. As for Hu Qing, a bald monk, he was even more unique. Buzz. As soon as she woke up, Gu Shower immediately tried to snatch the baby from Hu Qing's hands. But as a universe master in the 4 tribulation realm, she couldn't move among the 4 of them. With a single point of his finger, Hu Qing controlled Gu Shower. Shower. Do you really not recognize me? Wan Yen's eyes were red as he looked at the woman in front of him, feeling a chill in his heart. But he couldn't blame her. She had no memory of him. It was normal that she didn't recognize him. Gu Shower gave Wan Yen a disgusted look and said coldly, "Are you crazy? I don't know you at all. If you have a grudge against the Hai family, just kill me." She turned her head away coldly, unwilling to look at Wan Yen's affectionate gaze. Sigh. Hu Qing sighed beside her. Wan Yen, brother. It was clear he was ready to persuade him. But how could Wan Yen give up like that? He immediately turned his head to Wu Zua, as if grabbing onto a lifeline. Wu Zua, brother. Thud. As he spoke, Wan Yen knelt down directly. Jian Wushuang and Wu Zua hurried to support him. No need for that, Jian Wushuang said as he pulled Wan Yen up, trying to comfort him. Restoring past life memories shouldn't be difficult. There will always be a way. There would certainly be a way, but the current Yi Lingxiao already had a child. Wan Yen might not be able to accept it. Moreover, it seemed that Gu Shower and Hebedong had a very good relationship. If she really recovered her memories, it would probably be even more awkward than now. Wu Zua understood what Wan Yen wanted and comforted him. Don't worry, this issue originated from Realm King. I will get you an explanation. Although he said this, He couldn't guarantee that Gu Shaoer's past memories could be restored. Wanyan's face was deathly pale, and only after hearing Wu's assurance did he slowly get up. Although Gu Shaoer, who was immobilized beside him, did not know why these people were looking for him, he was somewhat surprised to see Wanyan like this. He hesitated in his heart, wondering what would happen if his memories from his past life were truly restored. What would happen to his current memories? Who would take the lead then? These were all issues. Perhaps at that time he would no longer be the same as he was now. But what could he do? He was now under someone else's control, and his daughter was in their hands. Gu Shaoer's eyes reddened, and a tear silently fell. Wuxia, contact Realm King now. Jian Wushuang, worried that something else might go wrong, urged Wuxia to quickly get Realm King to settle Gu Shaoer's situation. What should have been a joyful reunion had now turned into a tragedy. Wuxia took out a strange token and began to transmit his message to Realm King. Good. Hu Qing hesitated, wondering whether to intervene. He had a lot of experience with restoring past life memories, because he too had memories of a past life, but he had completely severed them. In his past life, Hu Qing had been a super prodigy in the Buddha realm, the only Taoist who had mastered the ultimate way. His Tao title was Tianji, but later, in order to rid himself of past life memories, he had suffered greatly to become who he was now, and some emotions from his past life still affected his entire life. Now Wanyan was encountering the same issue. Having emotions in a past life was troublesome enough. Having them in this life as well made things even more complicated. Perhaps it was best not to restore the memories. But he did not dare to advise against it. Yi Lingxiao's death was partly his fault. In fact, he was the real culprit. Realm King was the mastermind. In the end, Jian Wushuang was the biggest instigator. If he hadn't gone to destroy the Qin family to seize treasures back then, he wouldn't have released the monster Xilu. There wouldn't have been Yi Lingxiao's death later on, and he wouldn't have made such a formidable enemy for himself. Hu Qing got dragged into it as well. The killing. Too much karma had been tainted. If you counted them all, every time Jian Wushuang killed, it would attract a powerful threat. First, it was the blood sacrifice that led to Xianxia, which then involved Hu Qing. Then it was Broly. On the Dragon God continent, the third time he wanted to kill, he was stopped by Wu Li because of Dan Bao's peculiarity. Otherwise, he would have made a terrible mistake again. Now, to the current Xilu. Everything was related to slaughter. Jian Wushuang's breathing became somewhat heavy. From now on, he truly needed to restrain his desire for slaughter. It hadn't been like this before. Ever since he mastered the extreme way, he committed the grave mistake of slaughter every time he pursued the ultimate. Wanting to change was very difficult. This time, after arriving at the High family, he almost had the intention to slaughter again. Fortunately, he only shook and killed some universe masters and did not attack the weak. He couldn't continue doing this. As he thought this, a ray of light descended from the sky. Realm King projection. Swish. What do you need me for? Realm King's voice was somewhat lazy. He hadn't been idle lately, because many things had happened on Realm God continent. First, Xilu was sent over, causing dissatisfaction among the other Realm Kings. Moreover, the troubles he had sent to Realm God continent previously had also been revealed. All of this still began with Jian Wushuang's slaughter. Back then, when he killed the metallic light brain, he left a disaster behind, which Realm King sent to Realm God continent. Also, when he killed the young master of the blood-clothed sect, he entered the underground of Falling Phoenix Slope and discovered a pink flesh mass. Through the tunnel he entered, it also escaped. Having no other solution, Realm King could only send these disasters away, because he had no time to set up plans now. Clearing the metallic life forms had taken him an unknown amount of time to plan. Ultimately, it succeeded. Later, it involved Mieshang, and he also had a plan to retrieve. Now, Jian Wushuang and his team were returning to deal with Mieshang. But Xilu and the metallic beings created by the metallic light brain, he had no time to plan for them and could only send them to Realm God continent. Unfortunately, everything had cause and effect. Sending them there also required him to find people to solve them. Jian Wushuang and others were the best fighters for this. Saying that he was cleaning up after Jian Wushuang and others was not as accurate as saying Jian Wushuang was cleaning up Realm King's mess. The northern spacetime was far worse than they thought. No way around it, the true form of Realm King had fallen, leaving only consciousness. It was already good enough to maintain things as they were. If the northern spacetime were like the other spacetimes, it wouldn't be in this current situation. Divided into upper, middle, and lower classes, strong individuals were rare. Only the 9 major spacetimes in the upper class were worth looking at. For so many years, they hadn't even cultivated a decent strong individual. Once questioned by the starry sky, he would have to die again. Having no other solution, Realm King now regarded Jian Wushuang and his team as his lifeline. First, to cultivate them into super experts which he could brag about. Second, to solve those troubles. So, as long as Wuxia called him, he almost always responded immediately. After all, he needed them and couldn't afford to offend them. This time, after descending, he found himself in the middle spacetime and thought there was trouble, so he came down to see. Recover past life memories? Realm King slapped his forehead upon hearing Wuxia's words. He had indeed forgotten about this matter. Back then, after helping Yi Lingxiao reincarnate, he casually tossed her into the middle spacetime. Later, because of matters on Realm God Continent, he had long forgotten about Yi Lingxiao. Actually, back then, if he had waited 10 to 20 years, when Gu Shao's consciousness was weak, and restored past life memories, all of this could have been avoided. So, Realm King was indeed a pit. He wasn't willing to wait 10 to 20 years. Now, it had come to this situation. He himself was a bit embarrassed, but in his view, this was not a big deal. He immediately promised, "Don't worry. It's not too late now. I can erase her current consciousness and restore past life memories." Erase. Upon hearing this, Gu Shao's face changed drastically. Wouldn't that be death? Consciousness would perish, but the soul would remain. In this way, restoring Yi Lingxiao's past life memories would allow Yi Lingxiao to regain control of the soul. Wanyan's face froze upon hearing this. Looking at Gu Shao, he could directly see the other party's soul. It was a subconscious struggle. Who wanted to die? Wanyan, you must think clearly. Hu Qing came out and said a word at this time. He originally wanted to persuade but didn't have the qualification to speak. He was also involved in this matter. Now seeing the other party hesitate, he actively persuaded. Wuxia, however, didn't care about these things and retorted, "At this point, what is there to consider? Just restore it. As for this baby, we can send her back then." Wanyan, what do you think? Jian Wushuang didn't follow Wuxia's words but looked at Wanyan. He was the main person in this matter, so it was necessary to ask his opinion. But they had never thought about asking Yi Lingxiao's consciousness. Even if her soul had no previous memories now, it still had consciousness. Wanyan's hands trembled slightly. He looked at Gu Shao, seeing the steadfastness from before. That indomitable resilience. It was this very character trait that he admired. Yet now he had to erase that resilience. Forget it. The light in Wanyan's eyes faded, full of desolation. In the end, he gave up. If he truly erased Gu Shao's memories, it would be akin to killing her. He was unwilling to do that, because Gu Shao was now a complete person, not a mere object. Realm King, not understanding matters of the heart, saw that everyone's expressions were unpleasant and quickly said, "Actually, the soul can be exchanged. How about I split the soul into 2 parts?" "No need." Wanyan shook his head, then respectfully bowed to Realm King. "Thank you for your trouble this time, Realm King. I am fine now." Seeing this, Hu Qing felt very guilty but had no way to help. Gu Shao also saw that Wanyan was about to give up, and she breathed a sigh of relief. Although she didn't understand the relationship between these people and her past life, she could see Wanyan's infatuation. Realm King blinked his eyes but ultimately said nothing more. Realizing it was awkward to stay, he quickly bade farewell. After sending off Realm King, Jian Wushuang and the others also retreated one by one, leaving Wanyan to calm down alone. "Send her away." Wanyan turned to Jian Wushuang, showing a bitter smile. This time, I also troubled everyone. Jian Wushuang smiled awkwardly. It's a small matter. Since you can let go, then. Since he didn't want to erase her memory, he couldn't harm her and could only send her back. What a disgrace. They had all acted like fools before. It was all Realm King's fault for being unreliable. Of course, that was just from their perspective. From Realm King's point of view, there was no problem. Compared to Yi Lingxiao, the matters of the Realm God continent were clearly more important. If Jian Wushuang hadn't chosen to bring Dongshang and Wanyan back then, Realm King might not have even glanced at these people. The pyramid changed direction and began to return the way it came. At the edge of the tidal spacetime, Jian Wushuang stopped. He didn't want to go in and embarrass himself. Letting the mother and daughter go here was good enough. This place was at the border and not dangerous. Is there anything else you want to say? He looked at Wanyan, perhaps giving him one last chance. Gu Shower was leaving, and Yi Lingxiao would disappear forever. Wanyan didn't speak, took a deep breath, and turned his back on everyone, just shaking his head. So resolute, Jian Wushuang naturally had nothing more to say. After lifting the restriction on Gu Shower, he said calmly, "Go!" At this moment, Hu Qing also walked over and handed the baby in her arms to Gu Shower. After taking the baby, Gu Shower finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, she still couldn't face these people and said nothing, turning and leaving directly. Seeing this, Wuxia complained, "We've let her go, and she still doesn't give us a good look. Enough. We tied her up and brought her here, and you still expect a good look?" Jian Wushuang retorted irritably. Staring at the disappearing figure, Jian Wushuang and the others finally turned to look at Wanyan. But at some unknown point, Wanyan had already turned his head, staring at the figure of Gu Shower, unable to let go for a long time. "I need to go into seclusion." Leaving only this one sentence, Wanyan entered his own cave dwelling. He wanted to become stronger. Only powerful strength could compensate for his current emotions. Having long transcended the 5 elements of heaven and earth, matters of the heart only make one weak. Jian Wushuang sighed with regret. He saw things more clearly. Walking the path of the strong is a lonely journey. He wasn't lacking in confidence or life-and-death brothers. But how many of them had followed him to this point? Those from the Green Fire Realm, the Primeval Divine Realm, and the Grand Sea region were long gone. Later, he arrived at Qishan Temple. He met many people there as well. Shan Jun, Bai Junwang, the old man with goat horn, Gong Miaoi, and so on. None of these people could keep up with his pace. Such is the path of the strong. If you have a Tao companion, you must ensure that both progress equally. For someone like Jian Wushuang, who brings calamity, it was even harder. "Let's go too." Swish! The pyramid tore through the void, heading straight to the desolate land outside the tidal spacetime, towards the Niantian secret realm. To see the relics of the Moro spacetime, they also had to move downstream. As for Gu Shower, after being released by Jian Wushuang and the others, she used a spacetime Tao talisman to return to the Hai family's territory. The family reunited, everyone showing joyous expressions. Towards those mysterious powerhouses, they felt only fear, no other emotions. In the Shin Ta spacetime, however, an old man, lonely and dejected, sighed with his head bowed. In the midstream of the spacetime river, it wasn't just about love affairs. There were also various struggles. For example, the battle for supremacy. The top-ranked giant peak spacetime had always contended with the strong of the abyssal spacetime. This struggle wasn't for a city or a land. It was a battle for the abyssal spacetime. Now, hearing that super-strong individuals from the upstream spacetime had descended into the midstream spacetime, a huge change occurred between the two. Originally on the verge of conflict, the two sides began secret negotiations and even cooperation. But this was only on the surface. Behind the scenes, undercurrents surged. It seemed unrelated to Jian Wushuang and his group, yet was intricately connected. After leaving the tidal spacetime for 80,000 years, they traversed 33 spacetime rivers and vast desolate lands before seeing the largest spacetime secret realm in the midstream, the Niantian secret realm. Along the way, they encountered many practitioners. Jian Wushuang made no attempt to hide, arriving openly at the outskirts of the Nianshin's secret realm. Many forces were stationed here. Every moment, strong individuals were exploring the Nianshin's secret realm. As a spacetime-level secret realm, its scope naturally far exceeded those of the universe's secret realms. The outskirts alone were as large as a spacetime river. Like a star ring, it encircled the Nianshin's secret realm. Seeing the Nianshin's secret realm for the first time, Jian Wushuang and the others were all shocked. Babata, how long would it take to traverse the entire Nianshin's secret realm? He had a purpose this time, aiming to explore the core, even exploring it entirely, to search for traces of the Qixin and the Beast God weapon. The Beast God weapon was the key. This set of universe treasures was of great value. Each one could reach the 8 tribulations level. If the 9 Beast God weapons were combined, it might become a rare 9 tribulations universe treasure. By then, his divine power could transform in quality, giving him the confidence to go to the realm god continent. Hearing Jian Wushuang's intention to traverse the entire Nianshin's secret realm, Babata widened his eyes in surprise. Master, the current Nianshin's secret realm can at most be explored to the area outside the core, the flowing sand region. It was a universe master at the peak of the 8 tribulations who described it. To enter the very core, you need to break through 9 layers of restriction, each with resistance exceeding 20 million divine power, something almost no one can achieve.